Hello, welcome to the live stream. Today is February 22nd, 2017, and this is our weekly live stream Q&A and support and hangout and all of that fun stuff. So welcome. If you're new here, my name is Dana, and this is a live stream I do every Wednesday night. It starts at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and it goes for about, I don't know, 2 to 3 hours, just kind of depends. And yeah, so it's all about just asking questions and getting support. And I do my best to answer any questions you might have. And it's just a weekly hangout. So welcome. Diana is here. Welcome. And before I forget, if you guys, for those of you that have tuned into the podcast, thank you. And I'd be curious to know what you think about it and what you would want to hear on it, how I can improve, what you like about it, what you don't like about it, what you'd like to see in the future. If you have no idea what I'm talking about, the podcast is now on iTunes. It's been up for about a week now. And it launched on Valentine's Day. It's called Thrive After Abuse. And yeah, so super exciting, a whole new learning curve that goes along with that. Let's see, Carrie is here. Hello. Cecilia, hello. Welcome, welcome. And then before I forget, for those that are interested, we have the book club live stream tomorrow night at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. The book we're going to be discussing is the How to Go No Contact Like a Boss by Kim Said, I think is how you pronounce her last name. So it was a great book. It's all about going no contact like a boss. Appropriately named book. It was a good book, and so I'll be discussing my takeaways. I think Lucy's planning on being there. If anybody is interested in being there for the book club, shoot me an email at deardana@thriveafterabuse.com and let me know, and then we can make arrangements for that to happen. So lots of people are popping on. Okay, we've got Barbie and AJ and Shara and Bear who says hello all. Christine and Michael, Juanita, David, Kevin, Wendy, hello, hello, hello. Namal, Greg, Clock 99, Katie. Lots of people are joining in tonight. Welcome. And Kat C asks, how do you get over your children listening to your narcissistic mother? She has poisoned them. I have no contact with, I think it's her and the daughter. There is a fantastic book out there called Divorce Poison. Richard Warshaw, I believe, is the author. And in it, he talks a lot about mainly manipulation between two spouses and ideally how to divorce as amicably as possible, but basically how to handle separating from a manipulative person, especially when there's children involved. I think it's a great book for dealing with any type of manipulative person, not just a manipulative former spouse, but parents or anybody involved. He has lots of strategies, lots of techniques in how to minimize and prevent and potentially reverse a lot of the brainwashing that does go on in these types of situations. I would check that out. If you're interested, I have the notes on that book on my website at thriveafterabuse.com. If you go to book club and then go under book club notes, and then you'll see Divorce Poison. And I take very thorough notes on all of different books we read for book club. So I hope that will help. Kind of one of the bigger takeaways for me from that book is the importance of trying to keep a positive relationship with them. So if you have this other person who's actively trying to undermine you and they're poisoning them against you, to focus all of your time and energy in not like in trying to create a positive environment and an enjoyable time together with your children, and not talking bad about the manipulative person, because if they're brainwashed, they're probably going to take the side of the manipulative person. So instead, just trying to really create those bonds between you and them. The more you can do that, the harder it is going to be for them to buy into all of the poisoning. Hopefully in time, they'll be able to realize that they're not getting the full picture here, and they'll take a more like unbiased approach to things. It's incredibly difficult to do when you're dealing with a person who's actively trying to poison them and turn them against you. It's just, it's frustrating and it's crazy making and it's heartbreaking all rolled into one. I would also encourage you to consider getting into some support groups for parental alienation. There's quite a few on Facebook. There's several on the internet in general. Really, any type of narcissistic group, you're going to have people with narcissistic people and all different types of dynamics, whether it's spouses or parents or friends or coworkers or what have you. So it's, even though it's always kind of the same story, different scenery is really what it is when the dynamics are different like that. And there's tends to be, takeaways that you can get in whatever group that you join. So hopefully that can kind of help give you some support and some ideas on how to effectively manage and ideally negate or reverse the damage that's being done. So Cecilia says, I have a question. On Valentine's Day, out of the blue, a mutual friend of my ex and I texted me randomly to ask me about my Valentine's Day. He doesn't talk to me much. Then the next day he said, I hope you had a good Valentine's Day. I feel like I was hoovered. Does that sound accurate? If possibly, I mean, it could be. It's so hard to have mutual friends with these kinds of people because you just don't know what seeds they're planting, and it's, I don't know. It's so difficult to have. It's so difficult to have mutual friends. It's one of those things. It's like you get a toxic person out of your life, and then there's kind of this collateral damage that happens where other people may or may not realize that they're abusive or toxic, and they're still friends, and then they're flying monkeys, and they don't know that they're flying monkeys, and it's just kind of all of this chaos and drama and anxiety that happens being around them, because then you're worried about, well, are they really asking, or are they asking for this other person, and is this a Hoover, or are they just trying to be nice, or like what's going on? And I think you'll find in time that it's not worth the stress, and to kind of distance yourself from people, or maybe even better yet, distance yourself from people that you're feeling uncomfortable around, but also realize that you don't have to answer any questions that you're not comfortable with. So if something's coming across your radar is kind of strange, you're not obligated to give any information that you don't want to give. So you can always just change the topic, or just not get back to them, or however you want to handle that. But I don't blame you for being uncomfortable. That would make me uncomfortable too. Bear says, Dana, I've met a horrible dominatrix burlesque therapist. WTF, Bear. It sounds like there is quite the backstory to that. So Yes, so do tell. Narc Free says, I am in total distress and depression today after discovering my covert narcissist has been visiting escorts on the side and had a secret account on one of those websites, but he is continually denying it. His love bombing and denials won't stop, and I can't leave as he is manipulating my son. Well, I guess my question would be, how old is your son? And regardless, I mean, you can leave. You can leave. It's just the feeling that you can't. And so, depending on the age of your son, I would just make it very clear, this person has deal breaker behavior. This person's cheating on me. I'm not going to put up with this. I don't deserve to be treated like this. This is why I'm leaving. And I know that you might like them, and if your son is not his child, I would completely cut off contact. If your son is a minor, I would cut off contact between both of them and make it very clear that he is to stay away from your son and that you're done and conversation over. But the love bombing and the denials and the promises of change and I'll go to therapy and I have a sex addiction and I need help and blah, 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 very, very common. And it's just that backpedaling and that lack of remorse is what you're seeing. Venice says, hey Dana, my narcissist is hoovering me. He's coming up to me in public. What do I do if I see him next time? Do I run? I wouldn't run because then he knows he's getting to you. So he's coming up to you in public because he knows it bothers you. If you can either start hanging out in different places or all of a sudden get busy, like get on your phone or start talking to a friend or, what have you. Or you can just tell him like, dude, I don't want to talk to you. Like, we're not cool. I don't hate you. I just don't care. Like, I'm just done. I'm just over it. So bye. Bye, Felicia. Like, just done, And just really in being gray rock the whole time. So the more of an emotional reaction you have, the more he's feeding off of that. It's like dealing with it's like dealing with a child in an adult body or like a bully in an adult body. And they just love like a troll, it's like dealing with an internet troll in human flesh is like what it's like dealing with that kind of level of narcissist where they love to provoke and just agitate and aggravate and do all these things. He's doing this to get a reaction. So if you can deny him the reaction as much as possible, he will eventually move on. But, I would think ahead of time how you're going to handle this. So this way you're not waiting until you are in public to figure out some sort of plan. And then move forward with your plan if you see him. Sideways on Highways says, do covert narcissists express any traces of empathy or good manners where they ask for entitlement? Do they ever express pain around others? They can do a good job of pretending. They can come across as empathetic and they can be the nicest people you'll ever meet, and they can be charming and they can cry and they can beg and they can promise and they can say all of the right things and they can put on an award-winning performance, but their actions show their true intentions. So if what you're seeing, if they're doing a great job of talking, but then their actions show something else, that they're really like lying or cheating or manipulating or stealing or, doing all of these other things, then you realize like the things don't add up here, right? So, yeah. And that if they're really if they have that level of insight that they realize that because some narcissists don't have that. Like some narcissists will never say they're sorry. Some will never admit accountability. Some will never cry. Some are more on the extreme end of like they have zero insight to their behavior. And I think those narcissists tend to come across more like Sheldon in The Big Bang Theory, like kind of narcissistic, but more like autistic. Like they're just emotionally clueless. And I don't mean that as a knock against autistic people, but a lot of people confuse, autism and like that level of narcissism. Like, why does this person just not get it? The real deeply like narcissists that just don't have any self-awareness, that's how they tend to come across. The really covert ones can come across as prince or princess charming. They can really come across as having an intense amount of emotional depth. But once you are around them for a long enough period of time, you just realize it's all lip service. Wendy says, I can't stop the hoovering. I really need to have the strength to stay no contact. I feel like I'm on a horrible roller coaster. Yes. So I encourage people to make a list. I call it your for when you miss him or her list, and you write down all of the reasons that you want to stay no contact. And then when they do reopen contact, or when you are tempted to reopen contact, you go and you read that list and you make it crystal clear to yourself that doing so will only cause you pain. You've really got to make it painful, because that pain is what's going to snap you awake and remind you of, I can't do this. Like, I can't do this. This is a roller coaster. I want off. I'm wasting my life with this person. This is draining. This is exhausting. This is not love. This is not a relationship. I'm being manipulated. This person is like deeply problematic, and this is not going to ever be what I need or want it to be. And so the more you can reinforce that to yourself, the easier it is to walk away. It's sort of like quitting smoking or losing weight or, quitting drinking or any type of habit that you're trying to break. Like, to prepare yourself as much as possible ahead of time. Like, you're going to have cravings. Like, there's going to be those moments of weakness. And to plan for them as much as you possibly can, so you're not so caught off guard, so you don't, end up slipping back and having a cigarette or contacting your ex or, doing these things that you're trying to stay away from. And it takes time. It won't always feel that way. It's, it's like quitting smoking or anything else. It's those first few weeks, or like the first month or so, is the hardest. It does get easier over time. The more you practice it, the easier it gets. And if you can also supplement it with something positive. So just like not having your ex in your life, or just like not smoking or drinking, there's this void that's there. So if a person's really focused on not smoking, then they're going to be going around all the time being like, I can't smoke, I can't smoke, I can't smoke, I can't smoke. And then what happens, right? Like, all you're thinking about is like smoking. It's the same thing with an ex. Like, if you're thinking about, I can't contact them, I can't reopen contact, and you're so focused on them, it's a lot harder because you're giving so much energy to that, to what you're resisting. If you can take that energy and move it into something positive. So like with quitting smoking, it's really hard to focus on, I need to quit smoking, I need to quit smoking. It's much easier to focus on, I want to live a healthy lifestyle. And, to focus on like working out at the gym, or supplementing things to where you don't feel like there's that void in your life. Toxic relationships especially, because it's, they're oftentimes so interwoven into a person's life. If you've made your whole life around them, then that feeling of that void is really there. So anticipating, okay, if I'm feeling tempted to call them, if I'm having these cravings, what can I do instead? And maybe writing out a list. Like, I can go and spend some time in a support group. I can join meetup.com. I don't know, Chinese cooking or playing the violin or, learning to tap dance, or I can clean, I can organize, I can start organizing and cleaning out all of the closets. Develop a compelling vision of what you want your life to be, and then start moving in that direction. Once you start moving towards things that are positive, things that nourish you, things that feel good, then anything that doesn't feel good is going to be that much more of a turnoff. Like the appeal is just not going to be there as much. Okay, let's see. Katie says, do you have any tips for compulsive eaters? I've had this since my last big narc breakup and I can't seem to stop. I didn't totally just eat a whole sleeve of trifles or anything. So I think compulsive eating like that, it's oftentimes emotional eating. And here's kind of the gift. Like this is almost is going to sound like sadistic in a way. The gift in these types of relationships is it can bring so much of our own unresolved stuff to the surface that it's like a crash course in personal growth, or at least it can be. So if you're like, okay, wow, I am now coping by emotionally eating things. Foods that are really high fat, high carb, those tend to be really high in serotonin. So when people talk about comfort food, like literally, chemically, it's comfort food. And that's why it's so comforting, because it's releasing all of these feel-good type chemicals. So if you think about all of our behavior, everything that we do meets some sort of need. And if you think about it that way, it can get really fascinating. It's like, okay, this is really interesting. Like, why am I doing this? So kind of along the same lines, for you, I have gained quite a bit of weight since I started my YouTube channel. And I was, it's the lies we tell ourselves. Like, it's so crazy. It took me a really long time to be aware of it. Like, I kind of just, you make up excuses. You're in denial. You think the dryer is against you, like shrinking all your clothes, and, or it's winter time and I kind of put on a few pounds, and it can be easy to really justify problematic stuff that's going on. And so for me, it was the realization of maybe I am emotionally eating, but I couldn't figure out why. And then it's sort of, it's like being around all of this stuff is really heavy, and and it's making me heavy. So the realization of, at first I was really bummed out, but then it was like, okay, this is so interesting. Okay, I didn't realize that I was an emotional eater. Like, that's fascinating. Like, how did I not know that about myself? And so if you can try to replace the anger and the judgment with curiosity and realize everything that you're doing is meeting some sort of need, and if you can pinpoint the need, then you can go about addressing it in a healthier way. You can, because you're bringing awareness to it. So if you have that awareness of, okay, now that this relationship's over, I'm doing all of this self-soothing, I'm emotionally eating because it feels good, then once you can pinpoint kind of why you're doing it, then you can think about, okay, in what other ways can I self-soothe and get myself to feel good that's more constructive and more healthy instead of doing this. And then you can start thinking, it's just weird, because then once you bring awareness to it, you're going to realize, wow, okay, yeah, when I start missing him, or when I start, maybe at certain times of the day or night or what have you, you find yourself kind of gravitating towards the fridge. Then you can slow that down and ask yourself, am I really hungry? Like, am I physically hungry or am I emotionally hungry? Because oftentimes when we are emotionally eating, it's to stuff stuff down that we don't want to deal with. So I think you're not alone with that. Like, a lot of people, I think, struggle with trying to cope with these heavy emotions in a wide variety of ways: drinking, drugs, food, I think having promiscuous sex. There's lots of different ways people try to self-soothe after these types of relationships. And the reality is the best way to truly self-soothe for the long run is through self-love. And it's through treating ourselves with value and appreciating ourselves. Gratitude can be a great replacement for emotional eating. Just slowing things down and doing some affirmations and grounding yourself and focusing on everything that's good and right in your life and bringing that awareness to, like I said, everything that's good and right can really help. And telling yourself too that you love and accept yourself completely for who you are right now can be a very healing and very difficult thing to do. But it's really, really powerful stuff. Carissa says, I've had several mutual friends reach out to me and even hit on me. It's really confusing. Yeah, and who knows? I mean, if they're mutual friends, they could be kind of being set up by your ex, or if they're not being set up by your ex, then they're not really friends, because friends don't try to sleep with you. So I would really distance myself from those people that are being inappropriate and realize, that they're not friends, that they've either always kind of carried a torch for you and they were just kind of waiting their turn in line, or there's something more going on here. But if you're trying to heal and you're like, I'm a million miles away from wanting to date right now, and if they're not respecting that boundary, then they're not friends. The Truth Hurts says, my ex just contacted me 2 days ago with a phony profile to tell me her side of the story, which is totally twisted. What's the purpose of contacting me if she's claiming she's happy I'm gone? To provoke you, to agitate you, to get you to reopen contact. It's very common. And if you're done, you're done. And you don't owe her anything. You don't need to have this conversation. You don't need anything. Like, you block. And it's difficult if there's a phony profile involved. So a lot of times people find that just for peace of mind, that they just need to get off social media for a while or create a fake account. So you can leave your old account active, but create a fake account just to give yourself some peace. Because it's amazing. Like, once you create a fake account, you're like, oh my gosh, I didn't realize how often I was holding my breath and concerned that she was going to contact me, or that these friends of hers were going to contact me. Like, I didn't realize how much anxiety and stress was involved in me, like just how worried I was that I was going to come across these people on the internet. And it's just nice. It's nice to not have to look over your shoulder, to not have to worry about when and how and where they're going to pop up. Adriana says, it's been 22 days since I've checked my ex's social media, and I'm very tempted to check it right now. I'm trying to stop the habit so I can be full no contact. It's hard. Does anyone have any advice? I think it helps to try to slow things down and to tell yourself there is no benefit to you're not going to find what you want to find on there. Like, there's no benefit in checking their social media. Like, all it's going to do is bring you pain. And really, checking anybody's social media, unless they're family, is probably going to, and even then, it's probably going to bring a person pain, because social media is not real. It's everybody's highlight reel. It's everybody's like scripted version of who they want to be in this ideal life. I mean, how many people have you seen that are like unhappily married, or they're, like there's just all this chaos in their life, and then but yet they're taking these pictures of these high points, or they're photoshopping things, or it's weird. Like it's just this delusion that a lot of people want to portray to the world of who they are and who they want to be. And so what you're seeing is not even real. And so it's really not going to help give you any clarity or closure, because it's not real. Even with solid, normal people, it's not real. And even if it is real, it's amazing how we can work up this whole story in our mind about how their life is. So like if I were to put up, let's say, a picture of me doing a live stream, like, hey guys, going on live stream, YouTube, woo, right? And I put this on my Facebook page. How many people do you think go and look at that? And then they have this whole story about who I am and what I do. And, oh, she's got this YouTube channel, and, what that might mean to them. And I guarantee you it's probably all wrong. It's amazing the stories that we tell ourselves about people. So it's not gonna, it will cause you nothing but pain to go to a social media. Do whatever you need to do to remind yourself of that. So whether that's like whacking yourself on the hand, or just telling yourself, Adriana, stop, stop, stop. Like we're done. We're done doing this. And go do 20 jumping jacks. Go, just trying to give space, that brings space to that. So if you can just slow things down enough to where you're not like getting pulled in by that craving, that you can slow things down. And it's like, again, I guess smoking, right? You have that craving for a cigarette. And if you can just realize this craving is going to pass, it's going to last for a few minutes, and then it's going to be over. Like, I don't want to break not smoking, or I don't want to break no contact just for this moment of weakness. Like, I need to go do something else. So doing some jumping jacks, joining a support group, going and reading some people's posts, reading your For When You Miss Him, write down everything that you found when you went to social media last time. Things that'll kind of shake you awake and realize that it's, only going there is just going to cause you pain. Like, there's just, how much pain do you want? How much more pain do you want? And just get real with yourself. And then I think it'll be a lot easier to walk away. Okay. Hey, Sunflower 2 is here. Rach is here. Greg, welcome. Rising Danica is here, or Donica. Kevin says, hey Dana, at what point do you talk to your children about their narcissistic parent? My son is 14 and struggling with his mother. We have shared custody. I would talk to him about it in an age-appropriate way. And because even though he's struggling with her, she's still his mother. And what can happen is, if you're telling him, hey, you know what, your mom's a narcissist, or your mom has a personality disorder, or your mom is, whatever, that can really come back and bite you. And that can be seen as potential you trying to cause parental alienation. So I definitely would tread lightly around things like that. If anything, I would just focus on listening to him and validating him. So if he's saying, God, mom is so difficult, and she tells me all this stuff that I don't want to hear, and she lies, and she just, she does all of these things, and I can't trust her, and she's always letting me down, and on, letting him know, yeah, I'm really sorry that your mom does that, and it's not okay, and trying to develop some sort of game plan for when he's over at her house, how to make it as manageable as possible. Because if you do join in on that kind of knocking his mom, like, yeah, she's a total liar. That's why we divorced. If you kind of jump on that bandwagon, then what can happen is then he can start becoming really defensive because she's still his mom. Just like, if she were to attack him, he's going to become defensive because you're still his dad. And so it's really hard for children when they have a parent that's narcissistic, because it's their parents, for good or bad, are still like half of who they are. So kind of realizing that's his dilemma in all of this. And it's really hard for children to fully get to the point where they accept a problematic parent for who they are. And they let go of that hope that things are going to be different. For a lot of people, decades, if not their whole life. They might hold on to hope until they're 70 that their parent is going to change, and continue to try to win their approval and seek that love that they're never going to get. But having those open, honest conversations with him, listening to him, validating him, letting him know that you're sorry, that it's not fair and it's not right, and he does deserve to be treated with love and dignity and respect, and trying to turn it into more of like a teachable moment. And especially now that he's, possibly dating or getting close to dating, really, really using this as a teachable moment. So he's not repeating the same kind of stuff, and talking about, these are qualities that you want to look for as you start dating. And this is, what's workable behavior versus what's deal breaker behavior, and what kind of qualities would you want in a partner, and getting him kind of thinking about this. So he's not, when he starts dating, that he's not just dating a woman based off of, oh, she's good looking, or she's popular, or she's, I don't know, captain of the cheerleading squad, or what have you, that he's going for more like depth of character and personality traits that are there. Okay, rising Donica. And it says, my father is a narcissist. How do I deal with this? I'm 14. I guess it depends on what the dynamic is. If you guys are in the same house, or if your parents are divorced, or kind of what's going on, and what he's doing. So what kind of behavior, how does he treat you? What is his behavior like? Is he, does he insult you? Does he put you down? Does he belittle you? Does he yell? Does he, give you silent treatment? Like, what is he doing? How often do you see him? These kinds of things. A lot of it, what can help when dealing with a problematic person in general, just in life, is to kind of try to anticipate what they normally do, and to distance yourself as much as possible. So if he normally, I don't know, comes home from work and he's really upset and he yells because the house is a mess or what have you, if you're a minor and you're under the same roof, a lot of it is kind of walking on eggshells until you can get out of the house. But just kind of steering clear from him as much as possible. And it's so difficult. If you feel comfortable trying to assert yourself, if he yells at you and he puts you down, to try to draw a boundary with him, and it just depends. Every single person's different. So, if you're comfortable drawing a boundary, you might want to try that. If you're not, I fully understand. I think that's hard enough for kids to draw boundaries with healthy parents, let alone highly problematic parents. So, and just anticipating as much as you can, steering clear kind of as much as you can, realizing his behavior is not a reflection of you, it's a reflection of him. So there's nothing that you can do to, so even though I'm talking about kind of like steering clear of him, trying to anticipate his behavior, these kinds of things, there's not enough eggshells in the world that we can walk on to get somebody else to change. So it's really important that you see his behavior is it's problematic stuff within him that's just that he's dumping on other people. And it doesn't matter how much you clean or how great of a daughter you are, he's going to be that way until he decides to change. And oftentimes they often don't. So kind of doing whatever you feel that you need to do in order to survive that environment until you can get out of there. Tiffany says, I am a survivor. I feel so sorry for the new supply. I know she's suffering silently. Yeah. I'm glad that you're a survivor. So, yeah. Awesome. Okay, let me scroll down. I get so behind in the chat here. PL, the survivalist, says, has anyone seen someone accept a 30-day proposal? Yeah, I think, isn't there a show? Like there's a show now on TV that's something like that. It's all about like this whirlwind romance and how glorifying that and making it seem like this is ideal. It's just such toxic nonsense, garbage that's out there. It's no wonder people get so off track with their life when they think that what's problematic is normal, or worse, that it's ideal and healthy, because it's not. So, okay, let me read some of these questions I got before it gets too late. So this is from Sunflower, who says, would you be willing to lead a group online meditation? I'm wondering if all of the narc abuse gurus on YouTube would be willing to join with you and all of your followers and them and all of their followers for one collective virtual meditation session. I'm just thinking maybe 10 minutes or so at a pre-designated time. I'm just wondering if we all put our energy together simultaneously with a joined intention, what that would do. You see, the one thing we all have going for us is that there are so many of us. There's strength in numbers and all that. I don't know about you, but I'm tired of being the victim in all this. I wonder if we could all intentionally direct our energy to the same thing at the same time, and if that would, I don't know, do something. What do you say? Regards, Sunflower. Namaste. I would be totally up for that. That is so hippie woo-woo and so up my alley that, yeah, I think that would be super fun and awesome and lots of good energy. Yeah. So let me know if you talk to some other people. We could see, I don't know how we would do that, but I'm sure we could figure something. I'm sure somebody else knows like how to do something like that. My knowledge with technology is, as you guys know, very, very limited. So, but yeah, that'd be awesome. Okay, Anna says, Dear Dana, could you please make a video on a situation where there is no possibility to go no contact with your former narcissistic boyfriend as he is your coworker? The situation is you don't want to leave your job because you like it or because it's hard to find another one, but it's extremely painful to see your former narcissist on a regular basis. What are the words a person should say to himself or herself to protect their health and soul from this toxic manipulator? Sincerely yours, Anna. Okay, so there's a couple things that you can do. You can probably the first one would be this concept of shielding. So basically where you're envisioning a bubble of white light. So when you walk through the door, when you get out of your car, let's just start in the parking lot. Like when you get out of your car, you just envision a white bubble around you. And that's kind of this bubble of protection, and that nothing comes into your bubble except for light and love. And whatever anybody else says to you, whatever's going on, that if it's coming into your bubble, that you're going to use it for your highest and greatest good, and that you're going to embrace it, and that you're going to make the most of it, and that you're going to release all of that light and love back out into the world. I know how hippie woo-woo that sounds, but it really does feel good. So reclaiming like your power and control like that. Another thing that you can do is affirmations. So telling yourself, reminding yourself throughout the day, like I bring in only light and love. I exhale only light and love. Or like I bring in peace. I exhale stress and negativity. Telling yourself, I am strong. I am capable. I am a powerhouse. I am a force for good. I can do this. I love my job. There is so much right with my job. I love my life. There is so much right with my life. I am so thankful that I enjoy so many things about my job. I enjoy this ride to work. I enjoy being able to listen to music. I enjoy the idea of having a bubble of white light around me. I love that I am in control of my life. I love that I have power and control over how I feel. I love that I have power and control over how I react to other people at work and in my life in general. I use everything for my highest and greatest good, and then for the highest and greatest good of others. And you just start going on this, just this tangent of positivity. Every little thing that you can think of that you're thankful and grateful for as you're going to work. I am thankful and grateful for the sunrise, and that I have a car, or that I take the bus, or what have you. Just every single thing that's positive that you're focusing on. And then paying attention. So when you do get to work, paying attention to how you feel. How is your energy? And so if it starts feeling like it's being drained by this person, then this is a sign that you need to kind of back up physically and emotionally, and then get regrounded. So go to the bathroom, go outside, go take a quick break, kind of recharge, get your grounding again, and then go back in there and realize he can do his best to try to throw you off balance, but you have the power over how you respond to that. And just realize, just tell yourself, I'm not going to give them the satisfaction of seeing me ruffled. I'm going to handle this with style and grace. I'm going to handle this with light and love. I have my power and control. No one else. Keep telling yourself that. When you leave work, okay, so maybe when you get back into your car, when you go home at night, to visualize energetic cords. This is a powerful thing, I think, whenever dealing with people in general, even if they're not toxic, even if you're just dealing with a lot of kind of heavy stuff. So here's some things you can do. So there's this whole concept of energetic cords. So everybody has these kind of cords of energy that stretch out. And so if you're getting these, if you can kind of visualize, okay, these cords of energy, these energy exchanges that are happening between you and these other people, when you're leaving work, to visualize kind of cutting these cords. And so some people do this in a different ways. You can visualize yourself cutting these cords and then sending their energy back to them with light and love. It really helps to bring as much positivity and light to the situation as possible. visualize giving their energy back to them. What I personally like to do, because I just feels more positive to me, especially if you're dealing with somebody that has a lot of dark energy, it can feel like, it feels like there's like resistance there. Like if I'm giving somebody back, like if I'm feeling like, oh, there's just this energy vampire and there's this cord that's coming out and it's like draining me and all of this, like I don't want to, like I don't want to give them all of this dark energy back. Like I want that dark energy to be transmuted. So visualizing this cord of energy, cutting it, and then, this is going to sound really hippie woo woo, taking the cord and then giving it to God, source, the universe, the highest and greatest good, however you want to visualize that, the ultimate source of light and love. So giving it to them and hoping that it can create like a more just positive healing connection for them really helps. Like that really, really, really helps me. At a minimum, if you're like, I hate them, like if you can't even get to that place where there's any desire to wish them anything positive, at this point, then just cutting that cord and dropping it, or cutting that cord and just sending it back to them. That's totally fine. Really helps tremendously. Then, what was the other one? Oh, the last one I wanted to talk about was going back to paying attention to how you feel. If you're finding that these techniques, they might help a little bit, but if you're like really drained at the end of the day, if you're finding yourself, stressed out and you're feeling anxiety and depression and you're gaining weight or you're losing weight or you're sleeping too much, or you're not sleeping enough, or it's causing you a lot of stress, to realize that nothing is worth your mental health. Nothing. And there might come a day and time where you're like, you know what, I can no longer do this. The challenge with that is if you're in a stressful situation where that's just become your new normal, it can take a lot to realize this is toxic. So being aware of how you're feeling during all of this, kind of just checking in with yourself throughout the day to where your energy levels are, so you're not waiting 5-10 years where you're so sick and you're so used to being anxious and depressed and upset and all of this, to where you finally can't handle it and you up and quit. That if it's that bad, that you quit much sooner than later, because I guarantee one thing, like, you will never look back on your life and think, boy, I really wish I would have stayed in that toxic situation longer, or I really wish I would have worried about that more. Like you're probably never going to think that. So I hope that helps. Soul Food asks, how do we forgive and release the past? I know it doesn't happen overnight, but I feel like I won't get clarity until like 5 or 10 years, when I can get enough distance. Okay, great question. So let's separate out some of these concepts here. Forgiveness is one of those words that is so misused and misapplied. And the word really means to release anger. Like, I'm forgiving the anger. If you can think of it in terms of, I'm working towards releasing anger towards this person or towards this situation, then it has nothing to do with getting an apology. It has nothing to do with them. It has nothing to do with anything. It's you trying to make as much peace as you possibly can with the situation for you, because that anger, and it's righteous anger. It's appropriate anger. However, if we carry that anger around long enough, it'll turn your heart into a stone. And so when people talk about, holding on to anger, it's like drinking poison, hoping the other person's going to die. Like it doesn't work. It hurts us in the long run. And so a lot of people, understandably so, I get it. I was there for a long time, where they feel like, I have all of this anger. I don't know how to handle this. I feel like I can't put it down, because I don't want to somehow say that what happened to me was okay or that it wasn't devastating, because it's not okay and it was incredibly devastating. So there's that real struggle there. Or some people say, or they might think to themselves, well, I don't want to release this anger. I don't want to forget. I don't want to forget the anger because I don't want to reopen contact with them. And so there's this fear of, if I don't carry, like, if kind of like, here's the anger. If they're like, if I don't carry this anger around with me all the time, then this anger is a reminder. This is my reminder of how much pain they caused me. But it gets heavy over time, and it takes practice kind of putting this down and realizing, forgiveness does not mean forgetting. You will always remember what happened. It just means releasing the anger, realizing that you can give yourself peace and still keep this person out of your life. It does not mean that you need to reopen contact with them. It does not mean anything other than you're making the decision to live a really great life in spite of what happened. And then that's kind of where the healing happens and how the healing can begin. And it is a process to release anger. It really, really is. And again, it doesn't mean that what happened to you wasn't painful. It's not minimizing it. It doesn't mean anything other than you're making the decision to go and live a good life. And so again, a lot of people will talk about forgiveness. And I think it can be really helpful if you've survived any type of abuse. People will say, oh, you've got to forgive, you've got to let it go. I have such a problem with that word because it is so misused that I always make it a point to tell people, yes, I am working towards releasing anger. I don't even like using the word because it's so misused. So, and then letting people know, forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It doesn't mean I need to allow them back in my life. It's more of me accepting what happened, and that it probably could not have happened any other way because they are who they are. I got tangled up with them, or they got me tangled up with them. Like this situation happened and I'm trying to heal from it. It takes practice, lots and lots and lots of self-love. There's an interesting book out there. Some people find it helpful. Some people find it re-victimizing. It's kind of wherever you are in your process, your healing process. It's called You Can Heal Your Life by Louise Hay. And if you've heard me talk about this book before, the first time I came across it, I thought it was just a bunch of nonsense. Like none of it resonated with me at all. I picked up the book a handful of years later and I thought it was fantastic. So it really is one of those books, like it might not resonate with you at all right now, but it might in 5 years. And so, or it might in 5 months. So I hope that helps. Okay. Okay, so let me read some more of these questions. This is from Anna, who says, how can I escape an abusive relationship when I am 100% financially dependent on him and there are children involved? I would say your first steps would be to contact a local domestic violence shelter and also to contact an attorney, ideally one that specializes in domestic violence. The domestic violence shelter might be able to give you some referrals to see if they can do like a free consultation to see kind of what some potential options might be. Outside of that, friends, family, possible credit cards, loans, opening up an account he doesn't know about, and trying to put money away if at all possible, reaching out to friends and family and saying, like, I've got to get out of here. Can I borrow money? Hopefully a domestic violence shelter and an attorney will be able to help brainstorm with you some ideas as far as like how to go about leaving. And it's difficult if you're 100% financially dependent, but it can be done. It is, people do it all the time. So if you're not already in some support groups, that might be another avenue to explore as well. If you do that, I strongly recommend for everybody, if you're online, if you're concerned at all that it's putting you in harm's way, to create a fake profile and then join support groups, especially if you're going on like Facebook or places like that, to join support groups that way. Because with a closed group, even though it's closed, people can still see that you're a member. And it's one of those topics that you might not want people to know that you're a member or that you're thinking about leaving. So create a fake profile just for the purpose of joining different support groups and participating there, where you're not having to worry about anybody potentially following you into that support group and spying on you or what have you. Okay, let's see here. Okay, this is from Kelly, who says, I am just out of a 10-year relationship. I don't know for sure if he's a narcissist. He never accepts he's wrong. He flat out denies anything I question him on. We split up 3 years ago. He has issues with cocaine and marijuana. He lies and denies everything. He doesn't show any emotion. I left. I couldn't take it anymore. He's dreadful with money. He's always in debt. Let's see, I can't stand this roller coaster ride. He has never shouted or been aggressive to me, but I've always been last on his list of priorities. And let's see, last Christmas, I have been receiving calls from a withheld number. As soon as I answer it, they put the phone down. Is this him? And if so, why? We live 60 miles away from each other, and he came up at Christmas to collect his things but never took them. I found him on numerous dating and porn sites. I feel like I'm stuck in a roundabout. Is it him calling? And if so, why? And why is he not speaking? And what is he gaining? And is he a narcissist? And how do I move on? So if you look at the behavior, okay, so this is the challenge with labels, and people get all hung up on like diagnosing, and it's not even about that. Like the label aside, just knowing that a person is narcissistic is as enough of a problem. Like any one of those things that you described is highly problematic and highly worth being deal breaker behavior. So as a whole, like the cocaine, the marijuana, the porn, the cheating, the bad with money, the entitlement, he can't admit he's wrong, all of that points to like red flag city. So knowing that he's just narcissistic is enough. With that, is he calling you? It's hard to say who it is. My guess would be that it is probably him, because who else would it be, right? The timing is uncanny. So why would he be calling you? It's just, that's kind of what they do. And it's to provoke, and it's to kind of keep their hooks in. And it's something that they do. If it's the same number every time, if you can block that number, you might have to just get your phone number changed. I know it's inconvenient. I know it's not fair, but sometimes peace of mind is just worth it. So, if he's emailing you, set up all of his emails to go straight to your spam folder. Do whatever you need to do in order to keep your level of inner peace, and try to not because see, he's in your head. So if this is him, it's all of this confusion and upset, and is it him, and why is it him, and why now, and what is this about? All of this, they create confusion. A big hook for them oftentimes is creating curiosity. It's like bizarre behavior. Like, why are they doing this? Why now? Why, or it's somebody posted the other day in the support group, some sort of text message. It was totally designed to like provoke curiosity. I don't even remember. Like, it ended with something like, things are really bad right now and I really need to talk to you, but I guess you don't want to talk to me, so I'll just go. And it was this big provoking curiosity, but then also throwing in pity. And, it's hard to walk away from that, because the kind of human nature is we want resolution with things. And with a narcissistic person, you're generally not going to get resolution. It's just going to be more games. It's just always another level to the game. The drama. Yes. PL says the drama is super draining. Yes. Oh my goodness. Little Miss says, I've blocked over 150 phone numbers that my ex has used to contact me. It's time for me to change my number. Yes, it is. My goodness. And they can be persistent. And for people that don't know, like if they're, when they're fresh out of a relationship, they've never had anybody like this in their life, it's very easy to confuse this persistence with sincerity. And to think, oh, well, they must really care because they've called me from 150 different phone numbers, or they continue to drive past my house and it's been 2 years later. That level of intensity is not sincerity. It's them trying to regain power and control, and it's scary and it's problematic. So, and a lot of us do go through this when we're trying to distance ourselves. It's like they don't go away easily. They become very obsessive, and it's very much all about them, gaining and keeping that power and control. Okay, this is from Anonymous, who says, hey Dana, I've watched your other videos with regards to love bombing, and you've mentioned it's empty buckets, which are not filled from our side, and we get hooked because of the attention and so on. You mentioned that your reason for excitement was that your core childhood wound was rejection or lack of attention as a child. How do I determine what my wound is so that I can heal them and not be susceptible to love bombing in the future again? I'm a recovering codependent, but recently been hoovered after a year, and I just fell again for this love bombing. I got addicted and obsessed, but I could control and I stopped it. But there are, of course, still empty buckets, and that's why I felt those emotions. Kind regards, Anonymous. So, yeah, well, my childhood buckets, empty buckets, were, I felt very like unloved and very unimportant. And it's weird because like if you were to ask my parents, they'd probably think that that was strange, that I felt that way. So it was more of like my perception of events in my childhood. And everybody perceives things differently. So just saying, like, it's hard because we tend to want validation for these things. We're like, this is how I felt. And if everybody else in your family is like, well, that's really weird, like you have no reason to feel that way, then we're like, okay, well then maybe there's no problem. Like it's just me. So it can be really difficult to address, to really sit and examine our childhood wounds, because I think a lot of people don't feel justified. It's hard for us to spot them, first off, because it's how we grew up. So it's all we know as normal. And it's one of those things, it's like the last thing the fish notices is the water. So it's really hard for a person to think of their childhood and be like, oh, I really, think that should have been totally different. Like there might have been certain elements that people think, boy, I really wish I had another sibling, or I really wish my dad lived at home, or they might have certain pieces of that they wish were different, but odds are they don't realize, the full amount of kind of potential dysfunction like within that family, because that's how they were raised and that's all they know. So it's really hard to spot, and then it's really hard to feel validated in it. It's this feeling of that we're somehow betraying our parents, especially if our parents are like fairly decent, nice people, to think, well, it could have been a lot worse, or to kind of minimize what we went through, even if it was awful. Like it still feels like we're somehow betraying our parents. So it can be a little difficult for people to explore what their childhood wounds are, what their empty buckets might be, without getting like defensive of how they were raised or of their parents. It's really easy for people to slide into that, well, you know what, they did the best they could. And that's kind of like their defense. This isn't about like judging or blaming or pointing a finger or any of that. It's just trying to explore, to connect the dots and see how these pieces are connected. So for most people that fall into love bombing, it tends to be, I think, more of those emotional buckets. So feeling lonely, feeling unloved, feeling unimportant, potentially feeling a lack of stability, low self-esteem, kind of these kinds of things. An exercise you can do is to think about, have you ever had any other problematic relationships or friendships in your life? And, or even like work, have you ever had an emotional manipulator in any other significant role in your life? That anything that comes to mind, if you're like, you know what, I had this really problematic friendship when I was in junior high, or, you know, I dated this one guy 10 years ago, or whatever you can kind of point to. Is there a pattern? Did they all kind of start off the same way? And did they give a lot of that attention, or was it attention, or was it attention and affection, or was it just affection? A lot of people confuse, a sexually aggressive person with caring, because they're used to settling for crumbs of attention. So they're totally misreading problematic behavior, and it's coming across as something that's good. Because that empty bucket is really low. And when we have an empty bucket, we see what we want to see. We don't see what's there. It's nothing to do with you or me or anything. It's just kind of how our brains work, how we're wired to get our basic needs met. So let me stop this here. So if you can kind of figure out, okay, are there repeating patterns here? Those can be really good pointers of some areas to further explore. I think, like, odds are once you start to hit on those, you're like, okay, yeah, that's it. Like, I bet that's what it is. So, and then you can kind of reverse engineer it. So, okay, if you're like, okay, I was falling for the attention or this connection. Connection, I think, is a big one too. It's this feeling of significance, of, companionship. Wow, this other person really gets me. I really enjoyed our conversations that we had. I really liked the connection we had. So if you have that repeating pattern of, oh, it's this really intense, like soulmate connection that just blows up, and it's like they're not a soulmate, they're like Satan. Like if it swings to that opposite end of the spectrum, then that's that soulmate connection that you're craving. So it's that human bonding at that level. So once you can figure out, okay, this is what I'm missing and this is what this person's been giving me, then you can go about filling that bucket in a more constructive way and realizing that, healthy, balanced people, they don't pour so much into your bucket. So healthy people don't love bomb. They don't move at a whirlwind speed. There isn't that level of intensity there, which can be really confusing for a lot of people because they're like, man, I miss the connection. I miss the sex. I miss the conversation. I miss all the stuff that I had with this person. And they so want that again. But great sex, great communication, great conversation, all of that can be had again. But when it's with a healthy person, it's not all within like that first week. Like it grows over time as like trust is developed, as that rapport is developed. And this is, I think, one of the reasons people tend to fall for that love bombing over and over again, because it feels so good. We're like, oh, this time, this person who's creating this whirlwind situation that I'm spending 6 hours a day with talking to, this time I'm hoping it's real. But it's that level of intensity is never, it's always a red flag. And it's, you control the pace. Always, 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 always control the pace. And you move at a speed that you're comfortable moving with, and just going slow and realizing if it starts kicking up into a whirlwind, this is a sign that to slow things down. And if it's real, then once that whirlwind, that dust storm kind of settles, that relationship, the dynamic will still be there. If that whirlwind kicks up and it's still going, because whirlwinds very quickly turn into tornadoes and they can destroy your life. So it's really important to not let them pick up speed, even if it feels so right, even if you're not picking up on any other red flags. Like there's no benefit in moving at light speed to get to know somebody. There's just no reason to take those kinds of risks. Okay, this is from John, who says, "Hi Dana, I have a question about setting boundaries and limiting communication venues for my sake and my sanity. I have no text, no email. I'm limiting phone calls. I'm limiting my in-person communication. Am I going too far? I still live with her, so verbal interaction can only be limited. All other forms of communication are venues for abuse, for blaming, labeling, the usual. We have a child, so I can't cut off communication completely. My peace of mind has increased since I blocked her texting. Then the abuse resumes a few months later through email. I finally blocked that. Now I'm limited to phone only. I'm sure this will come up later in court custody. Am I going too far?" Okay, so I guess I'm a little confused it sounds like I don't know if you're living together, like what, if you're going through a divorce, or if you're going to be going through a divorce, or kind of what have you. I would keep a paper trail. So keeping things in text, in email, through voicemail, limiting conversations as much as possible, keeping them only to talking about your child, setting up as much as you can ahead of time, hashing out details, I guess is what it is, as much ahead of time. So if you're going to be sharing custody, to plan out, okay, who, what, when, how much, where is the exchange going to be made, who's going to handle, haircuts and clothes shopping and school supplies and homework and dinner, and is it going to be every other weekend, and do you see what I'm saying? Like hashing out as much of that as possible, so you don't find yourself dragged into unnecessary conversations. You can also, through court, oftentimes get a third-party communication. I forget that there's a company that does that, where all messages go through them. And it's kind of this court, I don't know if it's court appointed or if it's just kind of, like a mediator, kind of who they are, but that can really help. So making it very clear, kind of going gray rock. So being polite, being brief, just really setting that boundary of kind of who, what, when, where, how, and why. And then that's it. And not getting roped into anything else. And, just being cool, calm, and collected. Doing that. Realizing too that whatever you say can also, especially with the narcissist, can be potentially used against you. So just really being on your best behavior the whole time, which can be really hard to do, especially if she's provoking you. but practice it as much as possible. And it sounds like you're getting some good practice in because you've limited a lot of contact. You see what she's doing. You see a lot of the problematic stuff for what it is. So, yeah, keep doing that, and good luck. Good luck with all of that. Let's see. This is from Sarah, who asks, "Hey Dana, my question is, why does he blow so hot and cold? I was in a relationship with a guy that would say he did not want to be in a relationship with me, but then did not want to stop seeing me. I obviously think he kept coming back for the sex, but he clearly kept saying how he did not think I was right for him, and then I would not see him for a while, and the next thing he'd be back telling me how much he missed me and loved me. It was more the fact that he was so on and off that did my head in. I heard he is seeing someone now, and that he has been with her for 6 months. My counselor says he has commitment issues, but now he's with someone. I feel so down after he mucked around with me for a year and a half, and in the end, I could only get rid of him by getting an order of protection. Also, I heard you were going to do a video on what feelings to avoid when in a relationship. I've been keen to find out further about this." Okay, so first things first. This hot and cold. These are telltale signs of emotional abuse and emotional manipulators. It's the same thing. So, and it's a sign when you're dealing with a situation where you're like, boy, the good times are really good, the bad times are really bad. When it's that roller coaster, when you realize you're on a roller coaster, that's a sign to get off, because that's not a healthy relationship, and it's kind of, who knows why they do this. There's probably a lot of different reasons why emotional manipulators run hot and cold, but at the end of the day, it's highly problematic, and it's not workable. It's really not workable behavior, because there is no safety and security in there. Like you would always be anxious. When are they going to leave? Like, oh, I'm so great right now, but then tomorrow are they going to want to still talk to me? Like you just never know where you stand, and that does not make for a healthy relationship at all. Most of the time when they do this push pull, what you're really saying when they're doing this push pull is when they're saying, "Oh, you're so fantastic." It's kind of this like sped up idealization devalue stage that can happen within like an hour or a day. It's basically, I really want something, you don't exist. I really want something, you don't exist. And that's what I'm saying. Like you can't work with that. And that's a sign to go. He's not going to be happily ever after with her, even though he's been with her for 6 months, because this is his personality. So if a person runs really hot and cold, and if they have a pattern of just kind of using people and then tossing them away, odds are he's going to do the same to her as soon as the next bright, shiny object comes along, because that's kind of what that personality type does. I feel bad for her because the idealized cycle for her is lasting a lot longer. So when he does turn ice cold and it goes to that discard, she's really not going to see what happened, because things probably were so incredibly good, and then all of a sudden, boom, he's out the door, and that's like really, really traumatic. So his behavior, I just want you to know too, it's not a reflection of you. Like, it's not that this other woman is somehow better than you. His behavior is a reflection of him. Normal, healthy people don't run hot and cold like this. They don't treat other people like this. So please know that it's not, it's not that he really even has commitment issues. He's like, has deeply problematic behavior, and he has no problem with using and exploiting people to get what he wants to get. And that's just, there's just nothing good comes from that. So that's, and I know it's normal to feel hurt, and the fact that your relationship ended with you getting a protection order out on him, just realize that kind of excuse me, that kind of personality tends to get worse with time, not better. So if a person does become so obsessive and it's all about power and control, they're not letting go, it's this game that they want to play where it's all about them. You know, if you have to get an order of protection on somebody to keep them away, you're not dealing with like a normal balanced person. Like normal people don't need to have a restraining order put on them to stay away. So I know you're in a lot of pain, but this really was probably the best thing that could have happened, because this would have really been problematic down the road. So, okay, let's talk about feelings to avoid when in a relationship. And let me change that word to, instead of avoid, to be aware of. Because I think that's probably what I was trying to say, but so feelings to be aware of. Okay. It really boils down to paying attention to what gives you energy and what drains you of energy. So a toxic relationship feels toxic. It feels draining. It feels like the life force is being sucked out of you. It feels like you're slowly being poisoned. It feels, and it starts off with confusion. So all of these feelings that I'm going to be talking about here, these are all feelings to be aware of, and to realize these are the signals that there is a problem. Constant confusion. Introspection. Is it him or her? Is it them or is it me? Like, who has the problem here? And it's that constant wondering about, is it me? Am I too sensitive? Am I too emotional? Am I jealous? Am I being paranoid? Is this weird? Is this off? I don't know. That introspection grows with time as a person starts experiencing more and more problematic behavior. Then it spills over to talking and asking friends and asking family and Googling their behavior and going onto YouTube and trying to get clarity, because everything that you're experiencing is confusion. Is it weird that he has all these female friends? Is it weird that he's texting, strangers on Facebook or Snapchatting them at 2 a.m? Is it weird that he sleeps with his phone underneath his pillow? It's like, I think it's weird, but I'm not weird. Or that it's weird. All of that confusion in those kinds of situations comes from when we realize that there's a problem, but we wish we didn't know. Like, we see that there's a problem, but we wish it didn't exist. So that confusion, that's cognitive dissonance. It's this mental anguish, this mental going back and forth of, I see there's a problem, I don't want there to be a problem. I see that there's a problem, I don't want there to be a problem. And that's why we're wondering, well, maybe it's us. Because if we can think to ourselves, well, maybe it's us, then we can justify that, oh, okay, I guess it's not a problem. I guess I can stay in this relationship. It's not normal to have that constant confusion. Unfortunately, what a lot of people do, and I get it because I've been there too, is they seek clarity by asking this manipulative person for clarity, which is, you're not going to get anywhere. All you're going to get is lies or denial or blame. So that's a problem. So if you're experiencing clarity and you're reaching out to this person who's manipulating you, saying, is this weird? I think this is weird. And they're like, it's not weird. That never happened. Right? And they resort to gaslighting, or they say, well, yeah, I did X, Y, I cheated, or I opened up accounts or whatever. Can you blame me? And then they justify it and they spin it back around on you. It causes further confusion. And then if a person really wants to stay in that relationship, they're going to continue to buy into all of this behavior, all of this problematic, all of these lies, all of the lies and the manipulation. It's going to keep stringing them along. So it can be really, really difficult for a person to leave, especially if they have ideas about commitment and, staying with the person, and then they keep waiting. They're like, I really need solid, like rock solid proof that there's a problem before I leave. But if a person's waiting until there's like rock solid, like most of the time you're not going to get rock solid proof of anything. But if you're waiting that long, then you're waiting too long. You can wait for decades, and before you can get rock solid proof. So It's not normal to have constant confusion. It's not normal to experience squirrely behavior. None of that stuff is normal. Those feelings aren't normal. Feeling fear is not normal. Feeling constantly anxious or depressed about your relationship or about them or their behavior. It's not normal to feel continually jealous or insecure or paranoid, especially if you've never felt like this before. Like if you think about, okay, how am I in most relationships? Like think to like the healthiest relationship you've been in. Like, did you feel that way with that person? Odds are no. So, and it can be difficult, especially after if you've been in a relationship with an emotional manipulator before. There might be a lot of those residual emotions where you're asking yourself, you're like, I don't know if it's them or if it's me. Like, there's a solid chance it could be me, because I was dealt with gaslighting and all kinds of crazy making for a long time. But generally, when a person's in a healthy, sincere relationship, there's none of that. There's none of that confusion and fear and anxiousness or depression or eggshells. If you're feeling like you have to walk on eggshells, that you can't bring up certain topics, that you can't ask them about certain topics. If you're feeling that maybe you're crazy, if they're telling you that you're crazy, if they're making you feel like you're difficult to love, or that you're a difficult person in general, or that you're too demanding, or that you have all of these issues, those are all signs that this is toxic. If you're feeling ground down and diminished and demeaned, those are signs that this is toxic. And then, of course, too, like normal deal breakers, like any type of abuse, like being yelled at, being cussed at, being put down, being cheated on, being stolen from, being used, abused, exploited. Any of that stuff is outside the realm of normal behavior. And frankly, to me, that's worth walking away from and just getting out of there. So it helps to know relate emotions in like a healthy relationship for contrast. Like, how does a healthy relationship feel? Like, a healthy relationship gives you energy. It makes you feel empowered and inspired, and you enjoy being around that person, and it lifts you up, and you feel safe and secure and validated and seen and respected and appreciated and acknowledged and like an equal person in this dynamic, that you're entitled to like your thoughts and your feelings and your emotions and your opinions, and that you guys can agree to disagree, and that you can have civil conversations, that they're not going to throw a temper tantrum if you question them about something, that they're not going to give you silent treatment, that they're not going to yell or completely shut down. It feels like a give and take, versus a problematic relationship where it feels like a one-way street. Like either you're going their way or you're not. It's either you've got to completely get in a line with their thoughts, their feelings, their actions. All you have to take on their identity in order for the relationship to work, and you have to just stuff your own identity, your own thoughts and feelings and opinions about things because they don't want to hear it. Like, that's a problem. Like, that's not giving you energy. That's grinding you down. So I hope that kind of helps to illustrate the difference there. And once you kind of get used to things that feel good, like friendships that feel good, just being around, paying attention to how you feel in general, being around whatever, animals that feel good, going for walks and places that feel good, paying attention to your environment in general, I guess is what I'm saying, in what feels good. Once you get used to feeling good and kind of get more in alignment with what nourishes you, you're going to be a lot more aware of when you're feeling like something's not nourishing you. It's still very normal for it to take a little bit of time to register as far as what's problematic. But the more you start practicing this, the easier, the odds are that the quicker you're going to get out of there. So what might have taken you like a year or 6 months or 6 years or what have you before, now that you're bringing awareness to it and you're like, okay, these uncomfortable emotions are generally a sign that something's off. And, how do I normally feel? Do I feel this way around other people that I'm close to, that good friends, healthy family members, these kinds of things? Once you start realizing, okay, this is how it feels when I'm in a toxic relationship or a toxic situation, you'll hop out of that boat a lot sooner. So I hope that helps. Let me see. Let me scroll down here. See what people are talking about. Shara says, I saw a killer documentary that too often that they snap and kill their victims because they try to leave, or often after the breakup. I'm so fearful of this. So some do and some don't. It really just depends on a lot of different factors. It's what you're describing is called narcissistic rage. And that tends to happen if a narcissistic injury has occurred. And so that narcissistic injury happens when they start losing power and control over their target, over the situation. And it can be very strange. So they might have already moved on. They might even be remarried, but they also might insist that you belong to them, or that they're never going to let you go, or that you're never going to get divorced. These kinds of things, that's that power and controls talking. And so and they can very easily fly into a rage if they see their former partner with somebody new, or if their target says, I'm done, I want a divorce, or what have you. It's always good to err on the side of caution. So if you're concerned at all about your physical safety, if they've raged before, especially if they've physically raged on you before, even if they haven't physically attacked you, if they've done physically threatening things, so kicked the dog, or shoved a child, or punched a hole in the wall, or kicked your car, been physically aggressive around you to where it's creating that level of intimidation, to me that's a sign that they can become physically aggressive. So I would just err on the side of caution with all of that. So if you're concerned about leaving and that your goal is to leave, then I would say get yourself to a place where you're safe first, and then let them know that you're leaving. And then not letting them know where you are, not letting friends and family know where you are, unless they understand the severity of your situation. Unfortunately, it's one of those things, a lot of people, unless they've been in it, they oftentimes don't understand how serious it can be. And so you might be feeling like, I really feel like I'm in danger. And to them, they're like, oh, well, he really or she really needs to know where you are. And they don't take it seriously. That can be infuriating. So it's really important that you're only letting people that can value that secret have that information. It's a good idea to not have a formal mailing address, to have a PO box instead, to just develop a safety plan as far as leaving goes. And if you're concerned about your physical safety, to get as far away from them as you possibly can. Domestic violence shelters can help with this. They can even help potentially relocate people to different states. So really, It's okay. Even if other people think that you're overreacting, you need to do what you need to do for your safety and your sanity and for your mental health and your peace of mind. And yeah, so I hope that helps. This is from McAngel, number 1, who says, my husband had an affair last year. And in that year, I lost my father to Parkinson's disease, and a few months later, I was diagnosed with Parkinson's myself. He detached totally during the affair. He gaslighted me and blamed my Parkinson's for making him detach. I had been ill for 3 years. I nursed my dying father for a year while holding down a huge job. When he was caught, he never fought for us. I have 2 children, both of which are older. And he is now on to a second woman, ignoring me totally, following me finding out about their involvement. He now plays the victim, blaming me for money worries, etc. in the past. Our sex life had waned a bit because I was so ill and grieving too. It's left me feeling worthless, and he says I wasn't emotionally abused. Only I should get to say what happened. He left our family when I needed him most, and I'm just lost. I am so sorry that you're going through this, and what a jerk. Like, what a jerk. So his actions show just a total lack of character on his end, and like there's just no excuse for that. The level of selfishness, the lack of empathy, the lack of regard, all of it is just jaw-dropping. And I'm just so sorry that you're having to go through this. It's not your fault. It's not your fault. And, odds are people tend to not do like a 180. If he had this level of like lack of respect and lack of empathy and lack of regard, it's probably been there for a while and it just came to the surface. So it's probably been going on for quite a while. I hate to say that, but that's normally kind of how this stuff goes, because a person's character is their character, and that kind of stuff doesn't tend to change. And I agree with you. He doesn't get to decide whether or not his actions were hurtful or abusive. Like, they are emotionally and psychologically abusive. Gaslighting and denying what's going on and blaming you and blaming your disease and doing all of this stuff is it's psychologically abusive, and it's emotionally abusive, and it's just a total jerk move. And yes, you get to define what happened. You're like, this is what happened. This hurt me. Like, he doesn't get to decide whether or not he hurt you. Like, his actions are his actions. Like, how you're going to react to that, that's on you. And that's totally understandable that you would be emotionally devastated by that. So I would strongly encourage you to consider joining both a support group for narcissistic abuse, and if you haven't already, consider possibly joining a support group for people with Parkinson's. And hopefully that you can get that emotional support for both of these things that you're going through right now. So, because that's a lot. That's a lot on so many different levels. So, sorry. Just sending you lots of light and love. Okay, this is from Fed Up in Arizona. Dana, I am not sure how to explain this, but here it goes. Can you address how to handle a narcissist in the family when the family continues to put up with the behavior of the narcissist, and the one family member, me, that refuses to put up with the behavior gets blamed for not going along anymore and has actually been asked to not be the truth teller. So this narcissistic person can continue to be who they are. I've been blamed for giving up on them and not being flexible. The most hurtful thing is that these demands come from my parents. It's my youngest sibling that's the problem. Thank you. Fed Up in Arizona. So it's a challenge because all any of us have control over is ourselves. Like you can't control your parents. You can't control your youngest sibling. You can't control what they say or what they do or how they treat you or how they treat your youngest sibling. All you have control over is how you respond to this. So if there's certain types of situations that you find are more kind of crazy making than others, like holidays, for example, or you know, I don't know, that's kind of what comes to mind. Holidays or weekends or spending time together, to think about how you can, what steps you need to take in order to keep yourself kind of sane in all of this, realizing that this is their mindset. In their mind, that they're going to continue to enable your youngest sibling, and that's going to be their dynamic. So the sooner that you can make peace with that and just realize they're not going to change, your youngest sibling's not going to change, so that leaves you. And so if they start talking to you about your youngest sibling, to just say, you know what, I'm really sorry that you guys are going through that, but I just can't hear it anymore. Like, I love you guys, but I can't hear it anymore. So and so is not going to change. And or you don't even have to get into all that. You can just say, I can't hear it. Like, it's crazy making for me. I can't hear it. Or if it's a holiday situation, you realize, okay, my youngest sibling is going to be there. He or she is going to probably throw a fit. It's going to be this like high drama situation, to try to arrange things where you limit your time there, or that you keep your time, you start paying attention to like, when does this kind of quit becoming fun? Is it about at the like 3 hour mark or is it sooner than that, or is it after like a day? Kind of, what's your level of, this is still somewhat like, there's value in me being here? Because if a situation, people are so funny, right? Like, I did this with my own family for decades, where it's like, okay, we're family. This means that we get together on a regular basis, and then we get to the point where nobody's talking and everybody's arguing, and then we leave. And damn it, that's what families do. Like, and it's crazy. Like, why do we do that to ourselves? Like, that's nuts. So then it's so much nicer now to realize I can do like 3 to 5 days. And even then, I need to take a break and ideally have transportation, so I can leave and I can just go, or I can go to a park, or I can just do something to get a breather. So kind of, I guess what I'm saying is kind of like knowing yourself, knowing your limits, knowing what you need to do to kind of just get grounded to where you can enjoy this time as much as possible. And it's difficult when you've got a problematic sibling, where it's like, it's so draining. But the more you can see the situation clearly and kind of, I say accept your sibling's behavior for what it is, meaning not being like, I'm okay with it, but accepting it in terms of, this is just who they are. It does not look like they're changing anytime soon. So I'm just going to accept them for who they are today. And now I'm going to actually respond accordingly, versus the opposite, which is, I'm going to hold on to hope that they're going to be different, that they're actually going to be pleasant and polite. And then when they're not, because they're probably not, if you're expecting them to be a different way than they are, then you're in reaction mode. Then you're going to be upset. Then you're going to get into fights. Then you're just going to become very reactive, versus accepting it and being like, this is who they are as of today. They're probably not going to change anytime soon. I'm not going to react. I'm not going to get upset by it, because this is what they do. Like, this is every Christmas, or Thanksgiving or what have you. Things always end in a fight. They always start a fight. This is how this goes down. I'm going to anticipate that they're probably going to start a fight, or that they're going to say something snarky, or they're going to stir the pot, or they're going to do something. And because I'm going to anticipate that, then I can plan how I'm going to respond to that. So whether that means leaving after dinner, or, if you're flying into town to stay with them, instead of staying with them for a week over Christmas, maybe you stay at a hotel, or maybe you stay for 3 days instead of 7, or maybe you stay with a friend. Or do you see what I'm saying? Like, you develop how you're going to respond to that, to where it's not so draining for you. And it's just knowing, it's all about developing healthy boundaries, and knowing your limits, and knowing what works for you and what doesn't work for you. And it takes a lot of practice, Sue. So every situation, every encounter, every conversation you have with them, you're going to realize, like, more and more, you know what? I thought I could do 3 days instead of a week. I was wrong. I can only do 2 days. I'm going to try to do 2 days next time, or I'm going to better anticipate this kind of snarkiness or this kind of situation. Next time, I'm going to make sure I have a car. Next time, I'm going to go stay at a friend's house instead of there. These kinds of things. You just keep adjusting. Okay, this is from Sarah, who says, "Hi, Dana. I live in South Korea, and I really enjoy watching your YouTube channel. I was kind of dating a narcissistic guy 2 years ago when I was in the States for an internship program. I visited the US again last winter to see him, but I was shocked by all the negative words he had to say to me. He said I became too fat to be his girlfriend, and that he was never attracted to me, and that maybe I need plastic surgery to be more pretty, but he doesn't want to get married to a girl who's had plastic surgery. I have been no contact since I left the States, but I still miss him, and I stalk his Facebook almost every day. Nobody can understand me, including my family, my friends, and my therapist. Today, I found a picture of him with his new supply. She is taller than me and attends a law school, and she looks so gorgeous and rich. My question is, did he really find someone perfect for him, and will they be happy forever? Thank you for reading my question." Oh, gosh, it's so hard when this happens, when they're such a jerk, and they say such, like you said, such terrible, terrible things, and then they move on and they find this seemingly perfect person. Will they live happily ever after? No. That woman's going to be absolutely miserable, and he's going to destroy her, because it's his attitude. Who says stuff like that to a person? The fact that he has to tear you down is horrid. It's absolutely, like, inexcusable. Like, healthy, normal people don't do that to other people. So that's highly problematic, and that's a big red flag. Because if a person, that's what they do, if that's what they go around doing, is tearing other people down, like running really hot and cold like that, saying hurtful things, he's going to continue doing that, because that's in his mind, he obviously feels that that's totally an appropriate way to act, and it's not. It's highly problematic. So, she's in this idealized stage with him right now, which it sounds like you were in with him before. And then all of a sudden you came back to the States and he was absolutely just really, really horrid and mean and abusive to you. He'll do the same to her. People like that, they tend to not change. They tend to just get worse with time. The problem is it's going to Facebook, right? And so this is the challenge with social media, because what you see is not real. It's the idealized version of a person's life, especially with somebody like that. So what you're seeing is this very scripted version of reality that they want to show to the world. So if he's dating her and it's all about social status and public image, and that he landed this girl, you're only going to see all of the good. What you're not going to see is probably her side of things when that devaluation starts, it generally will start. So I get how nobody can understand where this obsessiveness within you is coming from. It's very normal, just so you know. And a lot of people feel the exact same way you do. They're like, what is wrong with me? Like, I can't seem to let go. But when you're, so in part what you're talking about, it's a thing called trauma bonds. And when a person goes through that really high and then that really low, and there it's like this chair is kicked out from underneath them, that level of pain, it creates this almost like obsessiveness within a person. And they do a lot of what you're talking about, that obsessively checking on social media, and they have a hard time letting go, and it can take a while, because it's hard when you're so in love with somebody, and then they kick that chair out from underneath you, and they're so cruel and calloused, and their personality does this like 180. It's very, very difficult to reconcile what you experienced, because there's no closure there. So like a normal relationship doesn't run so hot and cold like that. It's more of, if things aren't working out, they're not working out. There's kind of this gradual like separation, right? In a relationship like that, you go from going 100 miles an hour to slamming the brakes on. And it's a lot for a person to process emotionally. And it takes time. If you haven't already gotten into some support groups, I would highly recommend it. It does help. And I know it's easier said than done, but if you can really stop checking his Facebook stuff, it's only going to bring you pain. What you're seeing anyhow it's his idealized version of his life, and it's the idealized cycle for her. So, this guy's a jerk. That's a real hateful, awful jerk thing to say. And I really hope that you don't let his words tear you down, because people that like themselves don't feel the need to go around shredding other people like that. Like, that's totally a reflection of him. It is not a reflection of you, even if you have gained weight. Like, it's not a reflection of you. Normal, healthy people don't go around being ugly and hateful like that. And, all of his comments are just so ridiculous and hateful, and they were designed to hurt. They were designed to cut you down, because it makes him feel superior, because he's so insecure within himself. Like, this is kind of the bully mentality. And bullies don't live happily ever after. They really don't, because they hate themselves. They might seem to always get their way, but really what it is it's a life of, their children don't respect them, their partners tend to fear them, or they tend to continually leave. Like, they never have sincere connections with other people. It's just a very shallow, sad way that they live. And so please don't think that this is all you. This is just what they do, and you're not alone in this. So, okay, this is from S. Nichols, who says, Dana, I grew up dirt poor with two parents who were alcoholics and smoked a lot of pot. My father was murdered when I was a child, and my mother ended up remarrying. And thinking about my childhood, my parents never told us that they loved us, and I never had a birthday. I don't think my childhood was normal, and no wonder I let people push me around. But could my upbringing be the reason I fell into the trap of a narcissistic marriage? Yes, it definitely could be. But keeping in mind too, that narcissistic people, they target supply and they exploit vulnerabilities. And we're all human, so we all have vulnerabilities. It's just kind of knowing what these vulnerabilities are at this stage in your life. And so when we talk about empty buckets or like these childhood wounds, a lot of most people, I think, really have unaddressed childhood wounds. And so it sounds like you had a lot of stuff go on in your childhood. Yes, none of this is within the realm of normal. That sounds like a very extremely traumatic childhood, especially with your father being murdered. So I would imagine that there's probably a lot of issues with abandonment and with, you know, if you've got especially two parents that are alcoholics and they're doing drugs, oftentimes what happens is you've got a child that has to become the adult in the situation. And so, and then that kind of has its own host of issues. So if a child is used to being very like quote unquote mature for their age or becoming more of that adult role, they might not realize that that's a problem. And so later on in life, they might find themselves being attracted to people that need them because that's what they know. They think they really know how to take care of people. And it might not really register as a problem. So probably I think a lot of narcissistic behavior doesn't register for most people as a problem until things get really problematic. And then it's like so outside the realm of what's like okay for them that they can no longer like justify what they're experiencing, that's when it registers. Okay, like this is like hands down really a problem. And so if a person grows up with a lot of problematic stuff in their household, it can take a while for things to get bad enough that they realize this is in fact a problem, especially if they're comparing it. And this is normal. People, I think we all do this at first, anyhow. Think about, well, this is a problem, but maybe my partner drinks, but he doesn't drink as much as my mom. Or my partner hits me, but not as much as my dad used to. Or my partner yells, but you know what? My mom used to yell at us so much worse than this. And so if their gauge for what's workable or like what's reasonable is really skewed to begin with, it takes a while for stuff to register as like, I got to get out of here. But it's really important for people to kind of reset their radar for what's healthy, what's workable, what's deal breaker stuff. Because if that radar for what's appropriate is off, then the odds are they're going to continue finding themselves in problematic friendships, in problematic jobs, and with problematic people in general, with boyfriends or girlfriends or what have you. So it's really worth, knowing what is problematic behavior, kind of knowing the different types of abuse. There's 7 different types in all. So, verbal, emotional, psychological, sexual, financial, spiritual, physical. And the different types of behaviors that fall into each one. Once you can start realizing, okay, this is in fact what is problematic, like ideally not workable, like this is stuff that's deal breaker stuff, that gives a person a good foundation. And then also paying attention to how you're feeling within this dynamic. Because a lot of times, if a person's in a situation that's abusive, but it's abusive in a different way than they've experienced before. So let's say if a person experiences a lot of like financial abuse or physical abuse before, if they're with a new partner who is doing a lot of that gaslighting or has problematic behavior but's denying it, like these kinds of things, or like the subtle put downs, like the more covert type behavior, they might not be picking up on it that it's a problem, but they do pick up on it based on how they feel, because it always comes with confusion. It's that feeling of, I think like that's kind of rude, or that's weird, or is it him, or is it me, or is it her, or is it me? Like it's that feeling of like uneasiness. And that's that kind of feeling, especially if it's a constant feeling of like, this doesn't sit right with me. Those are signs that something's off, and those feelings aren't present in a healthy relationship. So, again, support group, huge fan of support groups and all of this, because a lot of people, when they do, if you are planning on leaving your marriage, or even trying to navigate your marriage, and if you want to stay in it, being in different support groups and getting that validation and clarity from other people, like, is this a problem, or how can I make, how can I work on staying? How can I work on boundaries? How can I work on leaving? How can I try to navigate this, and sorting out, is it him? Is it me? Like, what's going on here? It can really help to have that from a group. I think that's the power and the benefit of a group versus individual therapy, because with individual therapy, it's finding a therapist, like finding a professional in any field, can be a challenge. The hard part with a therapist is if a person doesn't know like what's problematic and what's not, then they're relying on this one other person in a room where there's no other witness to their dynamic, to telling them, to educating them to like what's problematic and what's not. And if you have a therapist that doesn't have a good grip on that, and a lot of them don't, then you're going to be fumbling around in the dark for a lot longer. So I'm not saying don't do individual therapy. I'm just saying I would do, if you're going to explore this further, to consider doing individual therapy, and especially doing support group kind of stuff, because it's a bunch of people that have been there, done that, and it can be really helpful to do both of them, is what I'm saying. So just some thoughts. And the support groups, they're 24 hours a day, a lot of, especially the ones that are online, and there's a lot of them. I encourage people to join a handful, see which ones resonate the most with you, and go from there. So I hope that helps. All right, this is from LJ. Actually, let me take a sip of my tea here, out of my giant tea, like stein, my beer stein teacup here. This is from LJ. He says, "Hi, Dana. I met my narcissistic ex-boyfriend through a meetup group that I really got into last year after recovering from a relationship with a sociopath. I had no idea I was dealing with a narcissist, as he was really covert. As you can imagine, he's very popular, and I'm having to avoid the events he signs up to. A great deal of my friends who are on Facebook too are in this group. Although I blocked him on Facebook and Meetup and everything else I can think of, and I've changed my phone number, I feel like that being part of my favorite group is kind of being in contact with him. I'm having to pay attention to what he's doing in order to avoid him and the couple of close friends he has, but I can't bring myself to leave either. And even if I do, then what? Do I delete our mutual friends on Facebook too? I will miss some of them, and it feels so mean. Plus, they'd never understand. So I don't know what to do. He's out a lot, having a great time with the people I want to be with, and it's making me more miserable than I ever imagined. I also don't know what he might be saying about me. Do I just accept that I can't win and cut my losses? It's driving me crazy. Thank you." Okay, so first off, you have no control over what he is saying with you. So that is a bunch of wasted energy, even trying to anticipate that. What I would encourage you to do, though, is if you have this group of people that you've met through Meetup that you really like, there's a couple things you can do. You can meet with them outside of Meetup and just say, hey, do you guys want to get together for coffee every now and again? Do you want to, do whatever? Or you could start your own Meetup group. And I think I forget how much it's not like that much. I think it's like $50 or $60 a year. So it's like, if I remember correctly, it's like $5 a month or something. It's very reasonable. If you have your own Meetup group, then you get to choose who joins. And so you could ask these members of this other group and say, so let's say if you're all a part of some sort of, I don't know, like group that normally goes out to dinner, or you play trivia or something once a week, to say, hey, you know what, I'm thinking about starting my own group. And let's say this other group normally meets every Thursday night. I'm just saying. You could arrange something where you're like, you know what, I'd like to do something similar, but I'd like to do it on Tuesday nights. Or you make your group where it's not like in competition with the other group, where it's a similar group, but it's different. Like it's a different day. Maybe it's different. Maybe it's women only. Like there's some sort of difference with your group. Maybe it's thinking about the commonalities that you guys have. So maybe you met through a group that eats pizza and plays trivia every Thursday, but you're like, you know what? I think I really want to have a group that goes out for brunch every Sunday. And then asking those people that you like, hey, would you guys want to get together? I'm thinking about starting my own meetup group where we do brunch every Sunday, something like that, and see what they say. So that way you're kind of reclaiming your power and control, and you have control over who joins the group, which is really nice. And as the meetup leader, then you can also like remove people from the group. So if you have, and you probably will, if you have problematic people that end up joining the group, then like, you can kick them out of the group, and it's just, you keep that circle together. I totally get how painful it is to have a person who has caused you so much pain, who then goes on to continue having this great time with all of these people that you like. I've had something similar happen, and it's really, really hurtful, especially because they don't get it and they'll never get it. And it's just, it's so frustrating. So I hope that you're able to really run with this and make it into a positive, and to start a group based around things that you really like, because it's a great way to find your people, to find people that like to do the same kinds of things that you do. So good luck. Keep me posted. I'll be curious to see how that ends up panning out. Okay. Let's see. Okay, I like this one. This is from To Be Free. Dear Dana, thank you for all the information you put out there. I'm coming back from being a person I didn't even realize I was. I was, and sometimes am still, living in a fear-based mind. I'm constantly stressed and going through hot flashes when I think of him. I am still working through all of the issues and trauma. I'm headed to a healthy mindset with understanding healthy boundaries and forming deal breakers for myself. It has been a long road to recovery, but I know within me I will be an amazing me, standing alone, for me and by me. Keep up the amazing work. You are a shining light and very much appreciated. Love, me. Thank you so much. I love getting these awesome updates from people. It's so cool to see people moving forward into a life that they love. And I love your strength and your power and your conviction and your determination. So yay, you. And please keep us updated on how you're progressing and any aha moments you're having along the way, and just all of it. Because I think it's empowering and inspiring for all of us. Because all this stuff can be really heavy and over time. And it's so nice to hear of people moving forward and having successes. And so please come back, share all that with me. Okay. Let's see. I have two more questions here, but let me hop down to the chat and see what's going on there. I mentioned this at the beginning of the live stream, but I'll mention it again. So I was saying, for those of you that have found my podcast, that have been listening, thank you. And if you have any feedback about it, what you like, what you don't like, what you'd like to see more of, what you'd like to see less of, these kinds of things, please let me know down below in the comments, and I will see what I can do with that. It's been a learning curve for sure with all of that, but it's, I guess it's to be expected. Also, we have book club tomorrow night. It's going to be me and Lucy at a minimum, and we'll see if anybody else wants to join who has read the book. We're going to do the live stream here, so it'll be on at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time tomorrow. And the book is How to Go No Contact Like a Boss by Kim Sade, I believe. So, let's see. I hope you guys can join us. And I'll be posting, Lucy again came up with amazing questions. So I'll be posting those tomorrow. And we'll go through those. And then I also have the next, I don't have the book up for April. Lucy, we're going to go, I don't know if you got my message or not, but yeah, we're going to go with your book for April. And go from there. So let's see. Venice, I thought I answered your question at the beginning of the live stream. Maybe I didn't. She was saying, one of the many narcs in my life is coming around up to me in public. What do I do? Should I run? Develop some sort of plan. So if this is what they do, gray rock, gray rock, gray rock, gray rock. Like act like it's totally no big deal. Get really busy. You just act you just don't, it's not that you hate them. It's not that you're afraid of them. You just, no reaction. Like you just don't care. Like you just don't care. Like they're somebody from your past. Like you're as emotionally invested as you would be if you saw like your second grade teacher, where you're like, oh, hey, okay. Like, just kind of, that's cool. But, and you just drive on. So like that level of, and that's not, not even that, like how you would be if you were to see like a great great aunt or a great great uncle that you've met 3 times in your whole life. Like just you're polite, you're pleasant, you're neutral. Like there's not, just kind of the bare minimum, and then you get out of there, kind of a thing. You don't have to talk to them. Just the less of a reaction you can show, the better off you are. Because if they're coming up to you in public, they're doing that to make you uncomfortable. They're doing that to get a reaction out of you. If you deny them the reaction, eventually with time, they will end up leaving you alone because they're doing it to get a reaction. So just don't give them that. Yes, thank you. Lucy says, the book club is at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time tomorrow. Yes, it is. And it'll be the live stream. Lucy and I are going to meet on, Zoom. And so we'll chat. And then it'll also be on YouTube. So people have questions and stuff that we can stop periodically and go through the chat. Let's see. Kevin is talking about, I'm really concerned. He has a wound that hasn't healed in 3 years and his teeth. I recently quit smoking just under 2 months ago. Well, definitely worth going to see a doctor about. If they haven't found any reason as to why your wound hasn't healed, it could be stress. It's amazing the stuff that stress can do, and delayed healing is one of them. But definitely worth going to a doctor and getting that checked out and seeing why. Okay. I know. Lucy says, I wish somebody else would join us on Zoom. I know, me too. I have an email out to another gal who I think wants to go by a different name on there. Polly. Polly's around tonight. It's her screen name. We'll see. So Oh, very cool. Helene says, I just wanted to throw out there that I am making an EP album, producing it, and then selling it for a product in college. And my narcissist breakup anthem that I wrote will be on there. Well, let us know. Let me know. And then I'll let everybody else know on here when it comes out. If you have a song, I'd be more than happy to put it on my channel. I think that would be super fun for all of it. Super empowering, I guess is the word I'm going for. But it's awesome that you're doing this project. Let's see. Oh, lots of good questions. Lou says, hey, Dana, is it true that narcissists are more likely to have status and wealth because of their ruthless nature to use and step on others to get to the top? Some do, some don't. Some have no money and they're parasitic and totally moochers, and they just go from person to person, just taking and taking and taking. Some of them are, high-powered people and are very wealth driven. So they're all kind of driven by different things. It just kind of just depends. They're people. I think at the end of the day, they are people. So there's a lot of differences. So some might be more, some might be more money oriented, whereas some might be more sex oriented, where some might yell and then some might not yell. Some might apologize, some might not apologize. Some might do a lot of like future faking and false promises. Some might not do that at all. Some might go to church, some might not go to church. Some might be really good with animals, some might not be good with animals. Some might really like children or seem to like children, and some might not like children at all. Some might be more along the lines of sex addicts, and some might not want to have sex at all. Some might be really emotionally and verbally abusive. Some might not be that way at all. So they all come across differently. This is why I think it's important to not kind of pigeonhole what we call like a narcissist, right? Like it's important to look at the behavior and not so much the label, because the behavior is what's important, and that problematic behavior can come across in like a wide variety of ways. And so paying attention to, I think it helps first off knowing like kind of what's healthy versus what's problematic, and understanding the kind of all of the different ways that abusive behavior can come across. Okay. Let me scroll up here. Right. Jennifer Helms says, covert narcissists are the worst. You don't realize who they are until it's too late. I'd never fall for a grandiose narcissist. I don't like people who are full of themselves. Yeah, I mean, some of them are really grandiose. Some of them can come across as humble and like not grandiose at all. I mean, I have come across a few that have been really active members. Well, my grandfather, he was the minister of a church. So came across as really kind of like a salt of the earth kind of guy, really charming, really, approachable. To those who didn't know him, he was like the world's greatest guy, but he was a womanizer and he was a liar, and he would, my mom grew up, kept getting kicked out of churches because he had all this problematic behavior and, just awful. So the covert ones I think are in many ways the worst ones, because you just don't see them coming. And they truly are the wolves in sheep's clothing. And most people can spot the wolves in wolves' clothing, but it's the wolves in sheep's clothing that's the problem. Alice says he's surrounded by drugs and alcohol. Is this typical of narcissists? He says he quit for me, but I'm not sure. It's addiction and narcissism and personality disorder stuff tend to really run hand in hand. But even still, like that aside, drugs and alcohol is problematic. Like it doesn't matter if the person's a narcissist or not. Like it's just problematic. So what bothers me most about that, though, what I find most concerning is that he's saying he quit for you. That's incredibly manipulative, like incredibly manipulative. And that can keep a person hooked in, feeling responsible for their sobriety. Like, oh, well, I can't leave now because they need me. Or like, I don't want to, yeah. If a person's going to get sober, if they're going to lose weight, if they're going to gain weight, if they're going to like make some sort of positive change in their life, they need to do it for them. So don't let him put that on you. Like whatever he's doing, it's because he wants to do it and he needs to own that 100%. It's because it's too much responsibility. Like who wants that, right? Like, okay, I'm quitting drinking for you. Wow, okay, now, like, and then if you leave, then what happens? And then what happens if I go back to drinking? He needs to quit for him. And, and if he hasn't quit, and if he's still around all of the drugs and alcohol, then that's a problem too. Yeah, Clock 99 says the part of I'm doing this for you, it's a trap. Yes. Yep. It sure is. Let's see. Yes, Lucy, I agree. Lucy says, overt narcissists will set you up to fall for a covert narcissist, and vice versa. I think it's normal when something causes us pain, we tend to do the opposite. I mean, that makes sense, right? So if a person's with like an overt narcissist, somebody that wolf in wolf's clothing, where they're an outright jerk and they yell, or they're really grandiose, or they're really abrasive, or they just shred a person with their words, those kinds of things. What tends to happen is a person's like, whoa, I never want that again. That guy, that gal, or whoever, that person's a jerk. Like, I don't want that at all, ever again. And so what happens is they swing the opposite direction. They do a whole 180, and now they're looking towards somebody where if they come across a person who's doing that love bombing, who's doing the opposite of that, right? So they're doing, instead of these words that shred a person and tear a person down, and they're not getting enough attention or affection. If they get the opposite from that covert narcissist, where it's constant communication, it's constant compliments, it's affection, it's attention, it's so much, it can feel so validating, and it can feel healthy, and it can feel like, boy, I've met my soulmate. I've won the relationship lottery. Like, that's how it feels. It just feels so intoxicating. And that person's not picking up on these are all red flags. Like, this is not healthy. But because it feels so good, and odds are they're realizing like this seems a little bit too much too soon. But because it feels so good, and it's so much the opposite of what they experienced before that was so problematic, that they don't want to walk away. So it's really common for a person to have that mental anguish, that cognitive dissonance that's going on, where they're like, is it me? Is it him or her? Is it me? Is it them? Is it me? Is it them? Am I making too much of a big deal out of this? Maybe I have issues with commitment or trust or what have you. I really don't want to call things off because this person, I can't tell if they're problematic or like my perfect partner. And so if you're stuck in that of like, you can't tell if their behavior is problematic or if they're perfect, odds are it's problematic. And so because a person, they don't want to slow down, they continue moving forward. Even if it's a really, really good covert narcissist, they'll even say, we can slow things down. It's whatever you need. It's all about you. And they can say all of the right things and just get better at hiding their behavior. So it so goes back to like going with your gut and just really sticking to what works, what you need out of a relationship, what your deal breakers are, what you consider workable behavior. If something feels off, it's because it's off. And so the opposite of that, so if a person's with a covert narcissist and they experience all of this love bombing and this intensity, and then they find out 10 years down the road or 2 years down the road or what have you, oh my gosh, this person's been living a double life all the time, then they tend to get out of those relationships. And then it's this feeling of, well, I don't know who to trust because this person I thought was my perfect partner, but they had a double life. And so now their radar, they're really off kilter because it's sort of like, well, now what do I screen for? Because if Prince Charming is problematic, then what does that mean? So they're going to start avoiding people oftentimes that are nice and kind and friendly, and that things get twisted up with their thinking too. That's where I was. And so it can be really hard for them to tell, having a hard time trusting people that are nice, because it's like, well, I don't know if you're nice or if you have an agenda, or I just don't know what's going on. And so what tends to happen with that is that they're and it's like a kind of a subconscious thing, but then there's a certain amount of safety that comes from being around a wolf in a wolf's clothing, where it's like, you know what, at least I know what I'm getting with this. Like I can see the snake on the pavement versus the snake in the grass. But then they're back into another abusive relationship, and then they tend to go back and forth between like overt, covert, back and forth until they've kind of figured out what exactly is going on, and some of the signs that they're missing, and really getting in tune, getting in alignment with how they feel, and kind of going with their gut and trusting their judgment. And it can take a person a long time. So okay, this is from Cindy, who says, can you talk about an enabling father? Do you think that they are a narcissist as well? I'm having difficulty finding anything about enabling fathers, and I'm having a hard time understanding and having clarity about my feelings and a parent's responsibility to their children and as adults. What is a good way to relate to these people? Are they just really good people stuck between a rock and a hard place? Do they need to own the abuse that they allowed to happen to you as a child and as an adult? Any thoughts or insights would be greatly appreciated. So I would say if you're looking for clarity, a good place to start would be children of narcissistic mothers. There's a lot of support groups and material out there for children of narcissistic mothers. If a person has a narcissist as one parent, then odds are the other parent is enabling. So those two things tend to really go hand in hand, or enabling or codependent. If as a child growing up in that environment, the parent, so the enabling father, right, in his mind, he probably doesn't realize that he's enabling, or in his mind, he might realize something's really off with my wife. He may even realize that she's abusive. Oftentimes, I think it's in his mind, it might be more of a that realize he's in an abusive relationship. He might be thinking that he's really been able to shield the children from a lot of her behavior, even though he hasn't. This is very, very common for people that are in abusive relationships, thinking that they're the ones in the abusive relationship, that it's not so much the kids. And people don't often realize that if you're in an abusive relationship and you have kids, they're in an abusive relationship too. And so because they're trying to survive the relationship, they're trying to get through, they have their own ideas about, what commitment means, oftentimes confusing, they don't realize that they're being manipulated into staying, really confusing, being in a relationship versus a manipulationship, because they don't realize that they're being manipulated. They kind of think, well, this person will eventually change given enough, time or therapy or rehab or religion or love or understanding. And that it just takes a person a while to really realize what's going on. Some people never realize what's going on. And so I think to a child who's in this dynamic, it can come across as both of these parents are very narcissistic. So you've got the one narcissistic parent who's being actively abusive, and then you have more of the enabling parent, or more of like the codependent parent, who in the child's mind is like, okay, yeah, mom is really abusive, but you allowed this to happen to me. Like, why didn't you leave? Like, why didn't you leave with us? But in the parent's mind, they might have stayed for like a wide variety of reasons. It might not have registered that it was that problematic. They might have been in denial about it. They might have, religion might have played a part in it, or their idea of their generation might not have been like, you just don't get a divorce. Or in his mind, if it was your father, he might have thought, well, if I stay married to her, then at least I have some sort of, a relationship with my children, because if I leave, she's going to probably get full custody, and then I'm never going to see my kids, or then I'll never be able to protect them. So there's all kinds of different reasons as to why people do what they do. And I think it can help to see parents as people, because so many of us, we see our parents as, but you're my parent, like you're supposed to protect me and guide me and educate me and support me and like be this like nurturing person in my life. And so if we don't get that, then, very, very common for children of either type of parent to become really resentful and angry about that. And of course, too, the enabling parent, because they've been in an abusive relationship. So the child's like, well, why didn't you leave? To the enabling, to what the child is perceiving as the enabling parent, they might have been they probably were manipulated the whole time, not realizing that like what they were experiencing was abuse, and that, on and on and on. So there's just kind of this whole level, like just different levels of dysfunction and this whole communication breakdown that happens in these kinds of family structures. And so I think it can help to realize that your parents are people too, and that everybody does the best they can from where they are, from the skill set that they have, from the understanding that they have, from these things. It's not to minimize it. It's not to say that what happened is okay. It's, I think, just to kind of give it more perspective. So he might, like, trying to talk to him now, like, will he own up to the abuse? Will he own his part in it? Maybe, maybe not. Like, odds are he's going to have a lot of his own justifications for it. And and in his mind too, it's like he's been dragged through hell and was trying to cope with this whole situation as best as he possibly could. And it just depends on kind of your relationship with him, and if you feel comfortable about having that conversation and about, mom is incredibly abusive, and having that adult conversation with your dad at this point, and taking him, going out for coffee or going out for lunch and trying to get as much of that out as possible. If you feel like that's a conversation that you can have with them. It's so difficult to try to make peace with all of these situations for everybody. And I'm glad that you brought this question up, because so many people that are in abusive relationships and that go through this healing process, and they are able to leave and they're able to move forward. It's so important to realize that if you have children, that they're in an abusive relationship too. And so to really talk to them at a young age, realizing that they've been traumatized too, except for them, they really don't have any of the coping skills, and they have all of these emotions that they don't know how to handle, and they don't have any, this is their baseline for what's normal. This is their baseline of what's love. And so if it's something that's problematic for you, it's problematic for them too. And to open up and keep that communication as open and solutions oriented as possible, and realize that the children might have anger, anger towards you, anger towards us, with being partners with this person. And it's a lot. It's a lot for a person to work through, but really talking about healthy boundaries. And there's CODA groups, Codependence Anonymous. Even if a person doesn't feel like they're codependent, it's for the free groups. They talk a lot about boundaries and standards and kind of what's healthy and navigating all of that. There's there's Al-Anon, there's Alateen, which are groups more for kids that oftentimes talk about kind of dysfunctional family structures and healthy boundaries and navigating all of that. There's online groups through Alateen and Al-Anon and CODA and these things. They're free, they're online, all different kind of resources that a person can explore. So, there's also a great book, that you might find some validation in reading. It's by a guy named Pete Walker, and it's called, what is it called? I just started away. That's like one of my favorite books. Oh, I think it's CPTSD from Surviving to Thriving, I think, by Pete Walker. Great book. And it really talks about different personality styles and how they develop. For me, and I think for a lot of people, when you can read something like that, it tends to bring a lot of clarity and understanding of just people in general. And it can bring a lot of peace and just, I don't know, peace and kind of healing. When you can see, he just does a really great job of kind of bringing all of this together and explaining how it all happens and the domino effect with it and all of it. So that might be something to check out too. Okay, hold on, let's see here. Okay, this is from Jen from last week, who wanted to know, she says, what are your thoughts on attempting to warn his next target, or actually her mother? His girlfriend is somebody that I knew while we were married. Our children went to preschool together, and she was a childhood friend of his sister. I know his girlfriend's mother too. I've communicated with her one time last year, and she's a really nice person, and it really bothers me that he's going to damage and trap somebody like her who doesn't deserve it. What are your thoughts on doing this? Or do I just let her find out on her own? Well, you can try. The reality is that she's going through this idealized stage with him. So she's going to have a really hard time believing that this Prince Charming, that her soulmate, is actually, highly problematic. So how you phrase it, I would say something like this. Say, I realize that you're probably going to think I'm like this bitter, jaded ex. And I get that. I would have thought that too. I just want you to know what I went through with him. Like, and I would be very specific. He did these subtle name calling things, or he yelled, or he would do silent treatment, or he would periodically, whatever he would do, and be specific and say, I just want you to know, because I really wish somebody had told me about this, that this is abusive behavior and it's highly problematic. And if you find yourself wondering if what you're experiencing is a problem, or like if it's him or if it's you, there's something wrong. And hopefully that'll give her that validation. So when she does start to experience it, because she will, that it'll plant that seed in her mind of, hey, you know what? She told me to kind of watch out for that. And now I'm starting to see it. And so she's not going to be as confused. But at the same time, realize if she does want it to work out, whatever you tell her, she's probably going to go back and try to get clarity from him. So she's probably going to go back and say, hey, I talked to your ex today. She told me that you did X, Y, and Z. And, he's probably going to laugh it off. And that idealized stage might last longer for her because of that, or he might go about grinding her down in a different way. Most likely it'll be the same kind of ways, like they're not terribly inventive, but it might just take longer because he might try to be on his better behavior. But just realize whatever you say to him or to her, it's probably going to get back to him. I wouldn't talk to her mother about it, because her mother, even if her mother sees it, her mother's going to be absolutely powerless in this. It's really going to be her that's going to have to make the decision as to leave, unfortunately. So, all you can do is put that out there. Give her some names of some different speakers on YouTube, or however you feel comfortable, and just say, I'm just woman to woman. I'm just giving you a heads up. Like, this guy comes across great, but it goes from fairy tale to Lifetime TV movie. And this was what happened with me. I hope it's different for you, but like, just heads up. Okay, let's see here. Okay, I think that's it. Let's see, it's so funny how I hop into the chat and it's like so not what I'm expecting to read. It's just funny. Sometimes the things people are talking about, like a vegetarian diet. Like, it's just really, really different than what I expected. Let's see here. Okay, so for those that are just hopping on, as a reminder, book club is tomorrow night at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. It's going to be here on YouTube. For those of you that have read the book that would like to participate in the chat, you can email me at deardana@thriveafterabuse.com, and we can see about getting you onto the Zoom chat, which is, it's different. And the reason that we're doing two is, so ideally we'll be able to live stream the Zoom chat to YouTube, but like, I need to figure out how to do that. So, and try to keep everybody's privacy private. So I don't, it's one step at a time. It's just a technology challenge. for me. But 6:30 p.m. tomorrow, Eastern Standard Time. The book is How to Do No Contact Like a Boss by Kim Said or Said. It's a really great book all about no contact. Martine asks, where do I find this Zoom? It's zoom.us. It's sort of like a GoToMeeting. And let's see, if you have a question too that you want to make sure that I see or that I read on the live stream, I try to get to as many as I possibly can. You can email me too at deardana@thriveafterabuse.com. And I will do my best to get your question on the show. Let's see. Diane says, if somebody tells you that you're too sensitive, is that meant to control you? Yes, yep. Cecilia says, yes, it's a grooming tactic. Yes. And so let me back up a little bit with that. Anything that's defined as defining. So if I'm telling you how this is how you feel, this is how you think, this is how you are, that's considered verbal abuse. So if I'm telling you, if I make a joke, especially when that's not funny, like if I tease you about your hair, right, or your weight, or something that, like, it's, and even if it's not even so direct like that, even if it's where, you grew up in the city or in the country or what have you, and I make a crack about that, if you don't find it funny, then it's somebody else doesn't get to decide whether or not they hurt your feelings. So if something hurts your feelings, it hurts your feelings. Normal people will apologize and say, wow, that was totally not my intention. I'm so sorry. Like, sometimes I think I'm funnier than I am. And then they don't do it again. Okay. When it becomes problematic is if somebody crosses that boundary with you, and let's say, because we all can joke with people or bring up certain things with certain people. We have different types. I know for me personally, I have different types of sense of humor with different people in my life. Like there's certain things I don't joke about with my mom that I might with different friends. I have certain friends that, we're real snarky to each other. And sometimes it's so, it's definitely crossing that line, but it's never in the realm of hurtful. But it can be sarcastic. That would really hurt my mom's feelings. And too, even with friends, like if we were to ever cross a line and be like, yo, like don't go there, people wouldn't go there. Or if they did go there, they sure wouldn't go there again. So everybody has their own boundary. And so that's part of saying like, hey, that's not funny, or that hurt my feelings. And for a person to respect that boundary. It's problematic if a person doesn't respect your boundary and they're like, well, you're just too sensitive. And so then there's like no accountability that they crossed that boundary, and then they just keep doing it. Like that's really not cool. So highly problematic. It's very common for like emotional abusers to continually say things like, well, because there's no accountability there on their end. So it's like, oh, you're too sensitive, you're too emotional, you're crazy, you're such a woman, or you're just an insensitive guy, or like these kind of like grinding down of another person. And so it can be so subtle that when it's happening to a person, they can feel like, well, maybe I am too sensitive, or maybe I am too emotional, or maybe I can't take a joke. And then they start it goes back to that introspection. Is it me or is it them? It's kind of that wondering, but it's problematic if you're wondering. But the cool thing is, once you can see kind of why this kind of stuff is problematic and how it tends to go down, once you see it, you see it. And then you'll develop more confidence in actually having boundaries, and you'll step out of that confusion into being more confident with being assertive and saying, no, I'm not too sensitive. Like, that's a no-fly zone for me. Like, that's my boundary. So you either respect it, you either step up or you step out. Like, there is no continuing to argue and defend and justify your boundary. So, yeah. Jennifer Helms says, my narcissist told me I was controlling because I didn't like him dating while we were married. He said I was controlling because I told him I didn't like him having a harem. Yeah, that is so common. If they're cheating, they'll accuse their partner of being jealous or paranoid. And it's like, no, actually, it's because you're cheating. Or if you call them out on their behavior, it's that blinding degree of accountability. They don't see it. Or that lack of accountability, I should say. There's no acknowledgement of wrongdoing. And if there is acknowledgement, if you can get that, it's never sincere. It's generally, they either spin it around, they blame somebody else, or if they do say, yes, I'm so sorry, you're absolutely right, but then they keep doing it. So you can tell if a person's truly sincere by their actions. Like, if their actions are problematic, that's a problem. If their actions are problematic, even if they have accountability for them, if they continue having them, it's a problem because it shows that they're not sincerely remorseful. If the person keeps doing these things, they're not sincerely remorseful. So it's exhausting trying to, you shouldn't have to fight for being treated with dignity or respect or loyalty or, kind of the basics of being in a relationship with another person. Absolutely exhausting. Yeah, when anybody starts telling you like how you should be feeling, that's a problem. And because they don't know and they're not you and they don't get to decide. So if something bothers you, it bothers you. Some people are afraid of spiders. Some people are afraid of snakes. Some people are afraid of the dark. It doesn't mean that they're too sensitive. It just means that's them. Like, that's their thing. Just leave it alone, right? If a joke's not funny, or some narcissists, they'll they go about like so many things in so many different ways, scaring their partner because they think it's funny. It's stuff like that that's more covert, where you're like, well, maybe like I need to lighten up because he seems to think it's hilarious, but it's not funny. Or it's a joke about something. And of course, oftentimes there's always kind of like that kernel of truth to it, surrounded in like a big ball of a lie. So they'll often kind of disguise abuse with like the like being brutally honest. Like, oh, well, you need to lose 20 pounds. Well, I'm just being honest. Like, you're just too sensitive. And it's like, no, actually, you're a jerk. Like, nobody asked you what you thought. Like, we don't go around keeping it real with everybody all the time. Like, nobody wants to just have people just be telling the total truth all of the time. Like, they would crumble if we were to be like, well, yeah, and here's a long list of everything that you could improve too. Like, people don't respond well to that. But in their mind, they think that they're entitled to just be hurtful and that other people need to just deal with it. It speaks to a lack of emotional maturity is what it is. So Sideways on the highways. That's terrible. Says, my sister is afraid of clowns, but that's too much fun to pass up. Ha ha. Yeah, and when something like really, when it can be playful teasing and they think it's funny versus they're terrified and it's not funny. Yeah, like most people know, like, okay, kind of where that line is. So, yes, Diane, that's a great point. It says narcissists believe that you should be whatever they decide you should be. That's exactly what it is. They will tell you, it's very defining. It's sort of like, you can be in my life as long as you fit inside this box. And if you don't fit inside this box, because you won't, because you're an individual, and I've created this box, this little box for you, then I guess you're going to have to just grind all the parts of you that don't fit in here. You're going to have to grind everything else down until you can fit inside this box. Well, that's like that's exactly how conditional love feels. Like how you are is highly problematic, so you have to totally change to fit inside this unhealthy idea of how I think that you should be. And not only that, but oftentimes what they want you to be is continually changing, because you're dealing with like a pathological personality where if a person's really truly miserable, then until they get that addressed, nobody's ever going to be good enough. Nobody's ever going, they're never going to be truly happy and satisfied because they're not truly happy and satisfied with themselves. And I think realizing that it helps to kind of realize it's not you, it's not us. Like it's them. And wherever they go, there they are. So they're going to continue to bring all of that insecurity and all of that just self-loathing and all of that unhappiness and all of that inside of them wherever they go. And so when people talk about, oh, well, they're going to move on and finally be happy, and it's like, not until they get that stuff within them addressed. Normal people don't go around needing to destroy other people so that they can feel like they're enough. And that's really basically what it is. Even if it doesn't seem like that, even if they don't seem like, oh, they're really insecure, it's talking about really kind of tangled up and twisted stuff going on deep inside of them. I'm not saying that it makes it okay. I'm just saying once you see it that way, you're like, oh, okay, like, yeah, this is what they've got going on with them, and I can't change them. My love can't save them. Nobody is going to be able to heal them except for themselves. And what's so tragic in all of this is because they oftentimes don't see it. Like they truly don't see it until a person sees that there's a problem, they're not going to be motivated to fix it. So let's see. Hayden says, what's that thing called when you have two different things being done to you? Is that called Stockholm Syndrome? When you have two different things being done to you. Are you talking about cognitive dissonance, maybe? I'm not quite sure what you mean. Stockholm Syndrome is where you have like a controlling person, a narcissist, and then you have like their hostage. So the term Stockholm Syndrome comes from a bank robbery in Stockholm, Sweden in like the mid 1900s, where these bank robbers, narcissists, right, broke into this bank and held these people hostage for, I think it was like 5 days. What happened during that time is the hostages began to sympathize with their captors, and they became very defensive about them. So when the police were trying to rescue them, they were saying, like, don't rescue us, you're going to kill us, this is a problem, don't mess this up. These people, you don't understand, they need compassion, they need understanding, they're good people. The police are the problem. And what's even more interesting is, so even after the hostages were released, decades later, some of them, one gal in particular, still had them over periodically for dinner. Like, they still stayed in touch. And so researchers were trying to figure this out, like, how on earth could this happen? And so the dynamic is very similar to that of an abusive relationship, really, of any type of narcissist in any type of situation, and their quote unquote hostage, which is whoever's being manipulated by them. So their target. So in that situation, it was, it was a bank robber and hostage, but in an abusive relationship, it's the abusive partner and their partner or their target. And it's the same kind of thing where it's viewed as this kind of defense mechanism where a person is trying to survive their situation, because to actually fully deal with the fact of this is what's really going on would potentially cause them to go into like emotional collapse. And so it's normal dysfunctional, but it's normal for a person to kind of project their good qualities onto a person whose actions show that they don't have those qualities. So just like the hostages were like, these people are kind and considerate and good people, when their actions are showing the exact opposite. So it's the same like in an abusive relationship, to be like, well, no, this person really could be honest and loyal and kind, when their actions are no, that they cheat and they lie and they say hurtful things. It's us projecting our good stuff onto them, because to fully see the seriousness of the situation is too much for a person to handle. Oh, what is that? Let's see. Okay, Hayden says, no, I'm off track. It's when Richard talks about them beating prisoners, then telling them that they love them. It's a psychology term. Shoot. Yeah, trauma bond? Maybe that's what you're thinking about. It's those highs and lows. So yeah, it was interesting. So they found that with the hostages, it's when, I think one hostage he told the bank robber told the guy, he said, I'm going to kill you, but I'm going to let you get drunk first. And the hostage interpreted that as an act of kindness and compassion, even though he was going to kill him. He was holding on to hope that, well, but he still could be a good guy because he was going to let me get drunk first. So trauma bonds are when it's a bond formed through pain and fear. It's a weird thing, and it happens in all kinds of situations. It's not just in something that's that extreme. Although that's where the concept of a trauma bond comes from, is extreme situations of kind of this misuse of, or this like application of fear and pain that bonds a person closer. I think it was on Kim, I was on Kim Saeed's blog the other day, just seeing what other books she had. And I was reading an article she had written about trauma bonds. And one of the things she was saying is that she'd come across this article about trauma bonds. And this one researcher was saying he was studying ducks or something, and he'd stepped on the foot of this duck. And that duck, instead of avoiding him, became even more attached to him and followed him around. And so it's weird. So there's this kind of like just this weird bond that is formed through pain. It's sort of with people, the way that I've seen it go down and the way that I've, like, hindsight being what it is, kind of experienced it in my own life, is instead of having the idea of this is what this person put me through, it creates this is what we're going through. It creates this bond of we can survive this. It's where there's now three of us in this dynamic. There's me, and then there's them, and then there's their bad behavior. Instead of seeing their bad behavior as a part of them, it's seen as like a separation of, I can't believe that they have this bad behavior because I want this dynamic to continue. So if I'm going to have it continue, then I have to believe that they're actually kind and good and that this bad behavior can be resolved. Interesting stuff. People too with trauma bonds, to a lesser degree, it's a very bonding experience to even go see a horror movie with somebody. How interesting is that? So they found that if you go on like a first date with somebody, right? And it's a scary movie. Even though we know it's not real, even though we know we're not in danger, even though we're not a part of what's going on, even witnessing people going through something traumatic bonds us to whoever we're with. It creates that experience of we're going to get through this together. And so there's this artificial closeness that happens that's not actually there. It's just it's a weird thing that our brains do. Truth Seeker says, horror movie snuggles. Exactly. Exactly. And once you kind of realize too how much of this is kind of biology or neurology, it's our brain. It's not so much us, even though it feels like us. So much of this is chemical reactions that are going on inside of us. I think it can kind of help give a person a lot of peace, knowing that, okay, this is like just kind of how we're wired. This is how human beings are wired. So yeah, like it feels crazy. Like it feels like we're going out of our mind. It feels like we're behaving abnormally. Like the gal was saying earlier, she's like, I'm obsessively checking Facebook, or I don't know why I can't leave, or I think I love this person, but they're terrible to me. And there's all of this anguish that's going on. So much of this is happening at a deeper chemical level. And these hormones and these chemicals, these bonds do break over time, but it does take time. All very, very normal. Let's see. Somebody had asked, Marie says, do you think that a guy that is a healer shaman that calls himself creator incarnate is a narcissist? Me personally, yes. I do. Because it doesn't get much more grandiose than that. So at a minimum, I would say it's incredibly problematic. And anybody, I think, that considers themselves to be the reincarnation of Cleopatra or Jesus or God, or that they have supernatural powers, or that on and on and on. I think all of that stuff, anything that's like delusional and grandiose like that, I think it's highly problematic. Unless they can prove it, it's just a delusion. So I'm a big fan of, grand claims require, grand proof. And so if these people that talk about, oh, I can channel, and oh, I have these extrasensory abilities and blah, blah, okay, that's fascinating. Prove it. And if they can't prove it, then they don't exist. So, unfortunately, when you have a person that's grandiose like that, who's referring to themselves as creator incarnate, that's a little difficult to prove. But yeah, I would be very, very suspect of. I just watch your wallet. That's like all I have to say, because those people tend to just be problematic. Yeah, it's just so. What are you guys talking about? John Goodman. What did I miss? Okay. And people are talking about movies and stuff. Okay. Yeah, that's a great point. Little Miss says the creator incarnate wouldn't call himself that. I agree. Let's see. Um, Kevin says, mine used to say, no offense, but so be prepared, an insult is coming. Yeah, why do people say that? Like, that's so ridiculous because that's exactly what they're doing. And it's weird that as a society, we're okay with that. Like, okay, that's just a giant eraser. Like, well, you can't take offense because I said no offense, but, and then I insulted you. And it's like, dude, actually, that's still like, kind of what? It's still weird and not cool. Oh boy. Katie says, if you still feel yourself mystified by these grandiose people and find yourself tempted to see them again, there is a great site called What's the Harm that will cure you of that. Oh boy, that sounds interesting and kind of scary. Shara says, or they say, don't take this the wrong way, but oh boy. Once you can see this behavior for what it is, there's so many gurus and religious leaders and like spiritual narcs and more of like the altruistic narcissists or you just start seeing it. You just start seeing it, and it's your eyes are open to it. It's amazing. It's just amazing. Semper Sapiens says, hi, Dana. How do you deal with the guilt of going no contact with a narcissist if you are an empath? If you were on good terms after breaking up, but felt they were emotionally manipulating you? So here's my thing with guilt. So with guilt, there's appropriate guilt and then there's inappropriate guilt. So appropriate guilt is guilt that a person feels when they've done something wrong. You know, if I stole your car, I should feel guilty. Like that's normal. Would be normal for me to feel guilty, right? If you if I go no contact with somebody who's proven themselves to be dangerous and destructive, then there's no reason for me to feel guilty because I haven't done anything wrong. My going no contact is an appropriate response to their inappropriate behavior. So appropriate guilt is feeling bad about doing something that you know you've done wrong. Inappropriate guilt is when we feel guilty for no reason. Especially we feel guilty for setting a boundary. So people that have trouble with setting boundaries feel guilty a lot if they have to say no, or they have to distance themselves, or they have to do something to kind of keep themselves safe and sane. It takes practice learning to set a boundary. And so it's important, if you are empathic, to learn to set boundaries. So this way your ability to be empathic, to understand people, and to be compassionate and caring isn't exploited, because it will continue to be exploited if you don't have those boundaries there. And if you're feeling bad for asserting yourself and being like, hey, this is not cool, like you stay over there. So you can still be caring and compassionate towards a person and keep that door shut and not have them as an active part of your life. And you don't even have to stay in contact with them. Like you can still, wish them light and love from behind a closed door. It's just setting boundaries takes practice. It does. And really, once you do it a handful of times, it feels so good because your life really starts working. And then you realize that your kindness doesn't become your weakness. Like your kindness, you're able to be kind and compassionate with people and not have that be abused, used, or exploited, because you realize that you can keep yourself safe because you know how it feels and how what problematic behavior is, and you know how problematic behavior feels for you, and you know what your deal breakers are, and you know the difference between like deal breaker behavior and workable behavior. And so when things aren't working for you, you're able to realize things aren't working for me, and you're able to back things up to a place where you can feel safe and sane and set that healthy boundary. And that then you realize, like, you're not afraid of being kind or compassionate or caring, that you could be in a whole room full of like narcissists and not be concerned about it because you know how to keep a healthy boundary. So it helps to get rid of that fear, because it's like, okay, like I can be nice, I can be polite, I can do all of these things. I know how to keep myself safe. So if somebody starts pushing that boundary, I know that I can hold that boundary and then distance myself to where it's not a problem. Diane and Wise Tech both have great comments. Wise Tech says, I think it's difficult not to feel guilty because there's an urge to help and fix the problematic person. And Diane says, guilt is tricky with narcissists because they are masters at projection and projecting guilt onto you. Yes. It's sort of like the wizard behind the curtain in the Wizard of Oz. Kind of once you know what's going on, then you see it. So it's only a big mystery and a manipulation until you see it. It's sort of like with online dating scams. Like once you realize, like, this is how this goes down. This is what they say. This is how they say it. This is, these are pretty typical dating scams. Once you're aware of it, like if anybody that asks you to send them money, 100% of the time through online dating, it's a scam. Once you realize that, then you don't get tangled up with them anymore. So it's the same thing with any type of emotional manipulator, any type of role in our life. So yes, they will try to get you to feel guilty. They'll say, I got sober for you. I'm taking this medication for you. I'm going to therapy for you. I'm going to change for you. I really want to make things work. Once you can start seeing that for what it is, then there's no guilt, because you realize there's nothing to feel guilty about. Like if a person wants to change, they need to change for themselves, not for me. Like I don't want to carry that. Like they need to own that, own it. So and it's like a little kid that's highly manipulative. Like once you see it, you see it, and then once you're onto it, it loses its power. So at first, yes, they can do a great job of trying to make you feel guilty. I need you. I need you. You're so good at communication. I've never met anybody like you before. I've met my match with you. I've never cared. How can you just walk away from me? Don't you value commitment? I thought you were Christian. I thought you would forgive and forget. All of these things, right? Like they're so good. Throwing these things out. But once you see it, you're like, oh, that's a nice try. Like I'm not falling for that one again. But until you see it, it's understandable that a person's lost in that fog of, well, I guess I am a Christian, and so I need to forgive and forget. And, well, I guess, oh boy, well, gosh, if they're going to try this time, if they're going to go to therapy this time, I guess I need to stay around. I mean, I don't want to give up before the miracle happens. Like, what if this time, like, they really turn a corner and things are different? And, you know, so a lot of people, once they start developing boundaries to the rest of the dysfunctional world, they can seem as really bitchy or really mean or really like no nonsense. But the reality is, no, they just have healthy boundaries. It's a lot of the other people that have problems with their healthy boundaries are the ones with the problem, but they don't realize it. And so it's, like, and you'll get to it just takes practice. You get to the place where you really are okay with drawing a boundary and you just truly don't care what other people have to say about it. It's like, that's interesting. Like it's fascinating that you have a problem with my boundaries, but it doesn't matter because you're not me and you don't, my life is not a democracy and nobody gets to vote, especially if they don't have to live with the consequences. So if I'm not okay with something, I'm not okay with something. Either that person can step up or they can step out. Like there's not a lot of room for negotiation here. The funny thing is, I wanted to mention something too, because somebody had mentioned this the other day, I think it was on Instagram, about how they were setting boundaries. They were doing so great with this. And now they were at this place in their life where there wasn't anybody in their life. And they were like, well, this is great, but now I'm totally alone. And I thought it was worth bringing up because there is kind of this lag time there. So when a person starts setting a bunch of boundaries, because what happens is there tends to be this one pivotal relationship in a person's life, like this major, like undeniable, lifetime TV movie, narcissistic relationship. And at first a person thinks this relationship is the problem. And sometimes it's true, like that is the only problem. More often than not, it's there's been a fire going on for a long time in their life. This is just the smoke they could no longer deny. Or that I should say that brought it to their level of awareness. They might not have even been denying it. It just might not have registered as a problem for any number of reasons. And so then a person starts looking around in their life after this relationship's over and they begin learning about boundaries and standards and, oh my gosh, there's these issues with their partner and there's these issues within themselves and getting into alignment. And they're learning about all this stuff. And then they start looking around and they're like, Dana, I am surrounded by highly problematic people. Like I've got narcissists everywhere I look. And that's very normal. And then they think, am I losing my mind? What's wrong with me? How can this possibly be? And the reality is if a person doesn't have, if they feel guilty when every time they say no and they're really feel like they need to just kind of go along to get along with people. And so they don't have boundaries for whatever reason, then odds are they have a wide mix of people in their life, probably a lot of which are highly problematic. And so then they start realizing this, like, wait a minute, this person's manipulating me and this person's been using me and this person's a total mooch and, I'm done. And they start cleaning their life out. And then they realize, oh no, now there's nobody left. And so it takes some time to develop those standards and develop those boundaries, and then to get new people in that are now, because you've leveled up, and you're going to find new people that are now at this new level. So, and it does, it just, sometimes it just takes time, but settling or, lowering your standards or softening up your boundaries isn't the way to go about doing it. It's kind of a short-term gratification, but it's not a long-term solution. You will become dissatisfied with that in the long term. So it's about knowing yourself, and it's about being yourself is what it is. So, okay, guys, with that said, it is late. And I need to get to bed before I turn into a pumpkin. So, thank you guys so much for joining me tonight. I hope to see you guys tomorrow for the book club, 6:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We're going to be here on YouTube, so you can just meet here and we'll go from there. And Mark, I have not read your PDF yet, but I did get it. I just haven't had a large enough chunk of time, but I will read it. So thank you guys so much for joining us. We'll see you either tomorrow night for the book club or next Wednesday for the live stream, 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. If you have questions, feel free to email me, deardana@thriveafterabuse.com, and we will go from there. Oh, Hayden says, we would love you even if you were a pumpkin. Oh, thank you. Okay, guys, take care and lots of love to you. So you are not alone. You are not crazy, and you really can move forward and heal from this. So it's about knowing yourself, and it's about loving yourself unconditionally. It really, really is. So take care, and I will see you guys soon. Okay, bye.